everything's turned on so we can do what we need to do.
Oh, and there's the guy, and there's the girl, and there's the girl.
Yeah, so we're just waiting for the stream to come through. When the stream starts coming through, then they can hear us and they can see us. So you hear that sound? Can you hear me on YouTube? Somebody on YouTube, leave a comment. Let me know y'all can hear me. And we are live over on Instagram. We are live on TikTok. So you see how you can hear yourself there? So that means the mic is working. At least we hope it is working. We're working on Rumble, X, good morning. YouTube, good morning. Instagram, good morning. Can y'all hear me on Instagram? Oh, you can hear me on YouTube? Thank you, Joe. TikTok, good morning. Instagram, good morning. Let me just make sure we got everything set the way it needs to be set, and then we'll get started. All right, make sure you don't hit the microphone with that, son, okay? Okay, so let's get this in here. So what we do is we put our pinned comment right here. You see what I'm doing? So we putting this right here. And we pin that right there. So you see how that comment is pinned right here? Yeah. Yeah? I don't think you know what I'm talking about. But this is what we're going to do here today. So good morning, everybody. Good morning, TikTok. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. No, don't touch that. You don't want to mess up the sound. We want to make sure people can hear us, right? You want people to hear us? Yeah, we want them to hear us, so we can't mess with that. So we got to leave that alone. You see this right here? That's letting us know that the sound is working. So we want to make sure they can hear us so we can get the point across. And when you get older, you're going to take over doing these live streams, okay? So right now you're apprenticing, doing these. Right now you're the apprentice. All right, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday so far. Y'all see the topic. If you're on TikTok, y'all the only ones who can't see the title. We're going to talk about DEI today and if DEI is being dismantled by the current administration. Are they dismantling DEI? Yes or no? Are they doing this? Why are they doing it? What are some examples that we can see of if they're doing this or not? And how do we feel about it? That's the conversation that we're going to have here today about DEI, the dismantling of DEI, and the future, if any, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically when it comes to what is happening inside the government and any organizations who are receiving money and receiving any type of assistance from the United States government, whether that be funding or tax breaks, et cetera. That's the conversation here today. And as you see, I have my assistant here today. He's learning, he's apprenticing, so he's shadowing me so he can see how this is done. Are you going to see how this is done? You want to see how this is done? He's not talking right now. His job is to shadow and not talk. So he's actually doing what he's supposed to do. So let me introduce myself first. So all y'all familiar with DEI? Yes? Okay. So all y'all familiar with DEI. I don't have to explain what that is, but we'll talk about that a lot. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. Former 9-year pro athlete, author of 40 books. Done 4 TEDx talks, created this brand called Work on Your Game. What we do over here is we work with licensed professionals to systematize and scale up their businesses. So any of you who works in a licensed business space, finance, doctors, lawyers, accountants, those are the type of people who we work with, and work with a lot of other people as well. But all that said, what happened? Did we drop something? I was over here. Okay, so you can't be dropping things. This is going to interrupt my stream. So don't drop anything else, okay? So let's get into this topic. All of you know what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. We talked about this several times in the past. And we know that many organizations, first of all, the government itself as an organization, and many corporate organizations who receive funding from the government have had DEI policies in place dating back at least the last 5 years, but going as far back as the last 15 years, this has been a thing. And as Donald Trump has come in, this is one of the things that he promised during his campaign. And again, whether you like Trump or not, one thing that all of us can agree is that he is following through on his promises. And he said that when he won, the night that he won the election in November 5th of last year. I remember watching the speech that he gave after it was announced that he won, after Kamala called and conceded that she knew she had lost. Donald Trump said in that speech, he said, as I told you all before, promises made, promises kept. And again, whether you agree or disagree with what he is doing, Donald Trump is following through on his promises. He's doing everything that he said he was going to do. One of those things was he's going to get diversity, equity, and inclusion policies out of the government and out of anyone who is receiving any type of assistance from the government. So that's what they've been working on. So Trump has openly campaigned on this from the beginning. So nobody should really be mad about it. You might be mad about it, i.e. you voted against it, but nobody can be mad as if he sprung something. Where are you going? You gonna listen? Nobody can be mad as if, excuse me, as if he sprung something new on people that nobody knew was coming. We all knew this was coming because he said, we're going to get all this diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff out of here, or some people call it woke. We're going to get this woke stuff out of here. All these things that he said he was going to do, he's doing. So nobody can actually be mad about this. He's following through on what he said. Now let's get into what DEI actually is, where it comes from, and why it became what it has become. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, started with benign, positive intentions. The actual idea of it, the corporate definition idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you close that door, son? Please. The corporate definition of the concept is benign enough and positive. What'd you say? Okay. If you go away, close the door for me. It started with positive intentions. All right. We want to have, instead of just having an organization or any type of organization that only has a certain type of person, let's diversify so we can get different views and different approaches from different types of people who come from different backgrounds within our organizations. There's nothing wrong with that. Equity, let's figure out how we can make the situation more fair and more impartial so everyone has a chance to win. That one is a little bit trickier, but on the surface, is that a fine idea in and of itself? Nothing wrong with that idea of we want things to be more fair so everybody has a chance to win. Not necessarily a bad idea on the surface. And inclusion. There are many places where it seems like people want an opportunity and maybe they're good enough to even thrive in an opportunity, but for whatever reason, they're not getting the opportunity. So let's create policies that will allow more people to be included in the discussion, in the opportunity, in the interview process, just so they have a chance to maybe show what they can do. This is what diversity, equity, and inclusion means if you look at the corporate definitions of the three terms, diversity, equity, and inclusion. On the surface, none of those sound that bad. All right, we all can agree. On the surface, if you were to sell somebody on that concept who never heard of DEI and they heard that, they would say, okay, well, I can't really be against that. Maybe some of them sound a little bit tricky and can possibly get abused, but on the surface, nothing wrong with these. The problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion is not the dictionary definitions of the terms. And this is where people get tricked. And it's 2025. Hopefully none of you are still getting tricked by this, but I'm going to explain it just to make sure. When someone is trying to defend DEI, what they usually do is give you the corporate dictionary definitions, what I just explained to you. Because again, if I explained it that way, who could be against DEI? We want a diverse set of people in this organization because that'll help us get different views and different perspectives. Nobody's against that. We want to make sure things are more fair so that everybody has a chance to win and everyone's playing on a level playing field. Generally, nobody's against that. And we want to include as many options as possible so that we have the best to choose amongst. So we make sure we have the best of the best in our organizations, on our teams, and when we execute on projects. Again, who could be against any of these things? Nobody. This is how it has been implemented. And this is the crux of the debate about DEI. So next time somebody brings up DEI and you are against it, this is the crux of the conversation. And you should just bring this to the table in the conversation if you're willing to have a conversation about it, which is this. The implementation of DEI is not as benign as it sounds when you read the corporate definitions. The implementation of DEI has been what? We're going to take whoever has generally been dominant in certain spaces, and most of these spaces doesn't even matter what they are. The spaces have generally been dominated by what? Straight white men. So we're going to take the straight white men and we're going to not let you all move up or not let more of you come in, and we're going to bring in anything other than a straight white man. So that means people of color, it means females, and it means people who are not of heterosexual sexual orientation. That's what it meant. That means anybody other than a straight white man. We want to bring more of you into a group. That's the diversity part. The equity part is, well, and the challenging thing with equity, if you look at the definition of the word, it says that things are fair and impartial. The challenge with fair and impartial is that they're very subjective terms. And they're defined by whoever is using the word. Whoever says equity, whoever says fair, they're deciding what fair is and what fair isn't. So when back in the day, some powerful army decided to invade a weaker country, and the weaker country said, well, it's not fair for you to invade us. The powerful country said, well, it doesn't matter what you think because we have the power. We decide what's fair and you don't, because you don't have the power to enforce whatever you think is fair. Same way to any of you who's a parent, you have children at home. If your child says, I want some ice cream, and you say, no, it's time to take a bath and go to bed, it doesn't matter if your 3-year-old doesn't think that's fair. Why? Because they don't have the power to enforce their opinion. So fair is highly subjective. It is based on whoever is in power. So this whole concept of equity, the way it has been implemented, is took organizations and companies such as let's say a Target or a Whole Foods or an Amazon, whatever company, decided to get involved in DEI, they would say, okay, well, we want to make a more level playing field. How do we make a more level playing field? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take groups that have tended to historically have power and access, and we're going to limit their power and access, and we're going to give more power and access to these other groups, these quote unquote marginalized groups. And again, what does marginalized groups mean? It means anybody other than a heterosexual white man. Okay, that's what it meant. That's what it means when they say equity. So anything other than a heterosexual white man, we're going to give advantages to you. So that means black people. That means any person of any type of color, any kind of skin melanation. That means any female, and it means anyone of a non-traditional sexual orientation. That's what we're going to give advantages to. And then the last one is inclusion. And inclusion is a simple term. Just means we want to have as many people in the room as possible. So here's how they implemented inclusion in DEI. And this is, I believe, if you ask me about the 3 letters of diversity, equity, inclusion, I think the inclusion, the implementation, this is the worst one. This has been the worst one when it comes to the results of it, because inclusion is all about we want to give as many people a chance as possible. The problem with giving as many people a chance as possible in any... Oh, wait, let me talk. Can't interrupt Daddy while I'm working. So the problem with inclusion is that in professional settings, you need the best performers and you want the best performance and you want to get the best results. But if the priority goes from being we want the best performance to being we want to include as many people as possible, it is only natural that the natural outcome of doing that is that your performance is going to suffer. Because if our priority, and the reason why, and let me explain to you logically why this makes sense. Understand that every organization must have a boss and it must have clear priorities. I was just watching this documentary or listening to this documentary about Amazon just this morning. Son, like, you can't talk too much while I'm talking. People can hear you and they can hear me. Okay, so you can listen, just don't make too much noise. Okay. All right, thank you. So when your priority is performance, we want the highest level performance and the highest level results, then that's what we're going to prioritize, which means whoever we need to bring in or exclude in order to make sure we perform at a high level, that's what we're going to do, because the priority is performance. But if the priority becomes inclusion, let's just bring in as many people from different backgrounds as possible. Again, it doesn't mean that the people that you include are not necessarily good. And this is another one of the tricky arguments that people use to defend DEI. They'll say, well, there are a lot of highly qualified, another subjective term, there's a lot of highly qualified people who could do well in a space if they were brought into that space. My response to that is, if these people are as qualified as you say they are, they should be able to get in when the priority is performance, rather than changing the priority to inclusion just to get them in the room in the first place. Because if you're good enough, you should be able to get into the room regardless of whether they have an inclusion priority or not. If the priority is just performance, if you're a good performer, you should find your way into the room. And I'm saying this as a black person, and I shouldn't even be saying it, right? I should be saying, well, include as many people as possible. But I want you all to understand my background. I come from the sports world, and in the sports world, there is no inclusion. There's no inclusion in sports. And when I say sports, I'm talking on the field, on the court. I'm not talking management. I'm not talking coaches. In the sports world, there is no inclusion. It is exclusion. It is designed to be exclusive. Any of you went to college? Why was the football team or the softball team or the volleyball team or the basketball team popular? Why are the sports teams popular on a college campus? The reason that they're popular is not because people necessarily like the sport. When I was in college playing college basketball, there'd be girls at all the basketball games, not because they really like basketball. Why do they come to the basketball games? Why do people go to the football games? Why do they go to the softball games? Or why do you note somebody like, hey, they're on the swim team. Hey, they're on the baseball team. Why does it matter? It matters because not everybody can be on the team. That's what makes it valuable. What makes the sports teams valuable is the fact that not everybody can be on it. That is exclusive by definition. Sports teams are exclusive. And that's why being on a sports team carries a certain amount of social value, simply because not everybody can be a part of it. We know the scarcity of something makes the value of it go up. And when everything is available to everybody, then the value of it goes down. This is why participation trophies are nonsense, because if everybody gets the trophy, who cares about the trophy? Nobody. The purpose of the trophy is that not everybody gets one. All right, that's why the trophy is valuable. So as soon as you give one to everybody, nobody cares about the trophy. So the whole point of this inclusion thing is we want to bring in as many people as possible. What this does is, again, by definition, it lowers the value of the room because you're trying to include more people. You know how people talk about this concept, having a seat at the table? You hear people use this phrase, have a seat at the table. The thing is, and somebody will say, well, we want to create a space where everyone can have a seat at the table. Some of you may even use this phrase. Some of you may even be in agreement with this phrase. I am completely against this concept of everybody having a seat at the table, because again, any table at which anybody can sit is not that valuable of a table. If everybody can sit at the table ain't that valuable because anybody can sit there. What makes a table valuable is the fact that not everybody gets a seat. You ever played musical chairs? Remember when you were kids, you played musical chairs? What made the game musical chairs fun? Because every round, another chair went away and there were fewer participants in the game. And the winner was the person who beat out everybody else when there were fewer and fewer seats available. When everybody could sit down, the game ain't fun. If you play musical chairs and you got 10 people and 10 chairs, you don't really have a game because nobody can lose. Everybody gets a seat. But as soon as you take a chair away, you got 10 people and 9 chairs. Now we got a game. You got 6 people and 5 chairs. Now we have a game. You got 2 people and 1 chair. You have a game. That's the whole point of it. And this is in life in general, that when everybody can sit, then the thing doesn't really matter. You want to increase the value of something, you have to make it scarce. Simple as that. I went to a business conference last week and I was on the plane both ways. Why is the first class section of a plane valuable? Any of you ever flown first class? What's the value of sitting in first class? Well, you get a bigger seat, you get more leg room, you may meet some interesting people sitting up in first class, you get food served to you, you get drinks served to you, you don't have to pay extra for most of that stuff. All of those things are the perks of sitting in first class, but the real value, that's what makes it valuable. That is 10 seats in the front that only 10 people get, and then everybody else got to sit in the back. All right, that's what makes it valuable. The fact that there's only a few of them. If first class, if you think about it, you get on a plane, if the first class section was the size of the economy section and the economy section was the size of the first class section, first class wouldn't matter as much as it does because it's too many people. It's not valuable because there's 100 people in first class. It don't matter. Now, there's only 10 people in first class. Now it matters. Everybody get what I'm saying? And this is the reason why people are willing to pay extra. The reason people pay extra for first class tickets, and I generally fly first class, the reason I pay extra for first class subconsciously, if you ask me logically, Jerry, why you buy a first class ticket? Why you pay $800 for a ticket when you can pay $200 and sit in the back of the plane? Why pay $800 to sit in the front? And I'll explain, well, I get more leg room. I'm tall, I'm 6'4". I don't want anybody reclining their seat and hitting my knees. You ever see videos of people fighting on a plane? It never happens in first class. It's always in the economy section. I want the meals that come with the flight, especially if I'm traveling a long way. I want a meal. I want some apple juice in a glass, not a paper cup. And I like dealing with nice flight attendants. The flight attendants tend to be jerks. If they're jerks, they're in the economy. I've never met a rude flight attendant in first class. Actually, one time I did. It was American Airlines, and I pretty much stopped flying American after that happened. But anyway, the whole point is I would logically give you all the things that you can measure about why I fly first class. But subconsciously, the reason I fly first class is not everybody can get in there. That's subconsciously, that's the real reason why I like to do it. Because I know that there's only 10 of us who get to sit up there, and the other 150 people on the plane, they got to sit in the back. And they don't get a meal, and they don't get nice service from the flight attendants. And if something crazy goes on the plane, it's usually happening in the back. I've never seen anything crazy happen in first class. Not in my experience. The whole point, folks, is inclusion makes the value of something go down. I'm giving you all of that to help you understand. So the implementation of DEI is completely different than the definition of DEI. And this is how people got tricked. This is why DEI was able to be kind of inserted into society, because people use the definition, which sounds fine. But then when they implemented it, people were like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? We're excluding heterosexual white men. We are lowering the standards so that more people can get in, and it's hurting performance. So why would you want to do this? Why would you want to do this? Well, there's an answer to that too. I'm glad you asked. The answer is because it makes people feel good. Here's the thing you have to understand. Any of you who's a salesperson, any of you who does anything that involves influence and persuasion, if you can make someone feel something, doesn't matter what it is, it can be positive or negative, if you can make people feel a thing strongly, then logic goes completely out the window. And I'm going to answer all questions and comments at the end, by the way. I do answer questions and comments, just not while I'm going through my content. When I'm done, I'm going to answer questions and comments. One of the biggest benefits of DEI, especially for the people who are implementing it and those who are receiving it, is that it makes them feel good. See, it makes me feel good if I'm running a company and I can say, hey, I'm diversifying my workforce. I'm making it more equitable and fair for everybody. And I'm trying to include as many people as possible. Well, again, who's going to be mad at that? Most people are not mad about that. There are some heterosexual white men who are thinking to themselves, That doesn't look too good. It's not working too well for me. But if a heterosexual white man was to step up and say, or speak up and say, hey, that's not fair against people like me, well, what's going to happen to that heterosexual white man? We know what happens. And some of you who are listening to this fall into this category, what happened to them? They got shouted down, tarred and feathered and attacked. Who are you, heterosexual white man, you colonizer, you person who stole land from Native Americans, you person who enslaved black people, you person who's dominated the world all this time, you person who's gotten all these advantages that you didn't have to earn just because you're a heterosexual white man. Who are you to complain about something working against you? Just be quiet while we get opportunities for ourselves. That's generally what happened to any heterosexual white man who dared have the audacity to step up and say, this is kind of unfair. So they had to stay quiet. So any heterosexual white men listening to this, let me say straight white men. It's easy to say that. Straight white men listening to this, you know, that's what you had to do for the last 15 years is shut the hell up and be quiet while DEI infiltrated all of our lives. That's what you had to do. You had to be quiet while everybody else got to take advantage of a philosophy, let's just call DEI a philosophy that benefited everyone other than straight white men. That's what DEI is. That's what DEI has been. No one can counter this. That's what DEI is. I'm not asking you to explain why it's okay. I'm not asking you to say, well, it's helped in this way or that way. We know what DEI is. DEI is a philosophy that got implemented through policy that was designed to help everyone other than, it was actually designed to hold back straight white men from advancement or opportunity and then open the door for everybody else. And that straight white man had to sit down, shut up, be quiet, and be okay with it. That's what DEI is. There's not really anything else we got to say about that. Someone mentioned my signal over on YouTube. Nothing I can really do about it. I mean, my Wi-Fi is my Wi-Fi. I'm streaming 7 different platforms. So YouTube hopefully stabilizes. So again, started with positive intentions. And again, most reasonable people will be okay of these things. The problem is not the definition. The problem is the implementation. And that's where they trick you. The trickiness is in the implementation, not in the verbiage. Because, and this is something that I've been telling all of you for many years, that many of the people who are pushing societally things that sound good on paper, but they're actually not good when they're implemented, these people are not dummies. So even if you don't like them, don't call them stupid, because they're not stupid. And this is a lot of things that's happening with Trump and Elon. And I see people on social media saying Trump is dumb. Trump's a dummy and Elon's an idiot, or he's the dumbest billionaire ever, or some stupid shit I hear people say. Her AOC say something like that. She's like, he's the dumbest billionaire ever, LOL. Like don't call people dumb because you disagree with them. Because for them to get to a position of power and a position of influence, a position where they're doing things that are affecting you to the point that you're commenting on it, they can't be that dumb. How'd they get to a position of power? Elon is worth as allegedly hundreds of billions of dollars. He's standing next to the president. Didn't he have to go through an election? Donald Trump won 2 elections, won 3 Republican nominations. He hasn't faced a serious Republican competitor in 10 years straight. You can't be that dumb. You can't be that dumb. All right, so even if you disagree with someone, don't call them stupid. That's childish. And if you're on the right, don't call people on the left stupid because you disagree with the things that they're doing. They're actually very smart. And one way that you know that they're smart is that they've been able to influence millions of people to believe in something that they're pushing. Again, even if you think what they're pushing is bad, how they influence millions of people. Now, here's the other cop-out that a lot of people are using, the cope that people are using. They especially use this with Trump. They say, oh, well, the only reason Trump won is because he only speaks to people who are just not that smart. He speaks to all the uneducated people. If that's the case, because I've addressed this on X. If you want to see me textually sharing these kind of ideas, follow me on X. My X name is @DreAllDay. And by the way, if you're watching me on TikTok, subscribe to my YouTube channel because I've been banned on TikTok 6 times in the last 6 months. So just in case it happens again, make sure you're on my YouTube channel. The link is in my bio. So this is what I say to people who say, well, the only reason Trump won is because he has a whole audience of idiots who are uneducated and not that smart and not intellectual. And now they're fucking around and finding out all the things that Trump is doing, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my response to that. If you, anti-Trump person, are so much more intelligent than Trump's voters, here's my question to you. He's been out since 2015. That's when he first started running, right? 2015. And he's had the same message the entire time. So in 10 years, you had time to see who he was. You saw what he was saying. You saw who he was appealing to. And your conclusion is that these people are not very intelligent. So how you, super intelligent individual, how were you unable to figure out how to reach people who are less intelligent than you and you had 10 years to study for the test? How did you fail? That's my question to any anti-Trump person who says, well, the only reason Trump won is because he talks to people who are dumb. Okay, so if you're so smart, how were you not able to figure out how to beat him at that game? I mean, you're smarter than those people, right? So it should be easy for you to manipulate them since you're smarter than them. So why weren't you able to beat Trump at manipulating stupid people since you're smart? That's just a question that I have for anybody who's anti-Trump. And I haven't gotten a good answer from anybody yet. Nobody's giving me a good answer to that one. They say all the educated people voted for Kamala Harris. Okay. Obviously, it's not enough of you. So if you're so educated, again, why couldn't you figure out how to talk to people who ain't that smart? I mean, all you got to do is take your intelligence and lower it down. That's easy, right? Why'd you fail at it? I mean, if these people are dumb. The whole point being, folks, this is what I want you all to understand. So we're talking about DEI here. The people who have pushed and got DEI implemented are not dummies. They are actually very, very smart people. And they know how to influence, and they know how to manipulate, and they know how to sell. That's the reason that they got the entire country to go along with DEI. At least at the height of DEI, there were a lot of people who were okay with it, or at least quiet about it. Now, slowly, the tide has turned. And of course, when Trump comes out in his election, he's trashing DEI. More and more people have become more vocal about it. And then him winning was a loud and clear response from the American people. We don't want any more of that, because that was one of his main things, is that we're going to get this DEI shit out of here. And people voted for it. So now the tide has turned and pushed back against DEI. So any of you who was planning to jump into the DEI train, let me refresh the page on YouTube, because I see a bunch of people on YouTube telling me that the stream has been interrupted. So give me 1 second on YouTube. Thank you for the gifts over there on TikTok. Let me get back into the stream on TikTok. Let's see. Go live. I'm going back live on YouTube. YouTube streaming is tricky. Once you start it, getting back into it. YouTube, let me know if the stream is better now, if the quality is better. I don't know why just on YouTube I'm getting this issue. I'm not getting this issue on Rumble, X. I'm not getting it on Facebook, and I'm not getting it on LinkedIn. I'm only getting it on YouTube, so I don't know what the issue is. Is it better now? Are we back? Are we better on YouTube? Is the stream more clear? Can you hear me? Can you see me? How many fingers am I holding up? Anyway, all right, continuing with what I'm saying. These people who have implemented DEI are not dummies. All right, these people are not dummies at all. They know exactly what they're doing. They know who they're selling to, and they know how to sell it. And they package it up as an emotional thing, which bypasses the logical centers of people's brains. This is the easiest way to influence people. So any of you want to be a better salesperson, learn how to tap into people's emotions. It sells better than logic, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. So the implementation of DEI, again, is essentially reverse racism. That's what it became. That's what DEI is. And I already explained this. It's reverse racism. It's taking whatever people have perceived that back in the day, there was racism by mostly controlled by white men, straight white men, against everybody else. It's actually not even racism, but just to say bigotry and suppression. So they held down the LGBTQ, they held down women, and they held down minorities. Now we're going to flip it around, and those groups are now going to hold down or block the straight white man from anything, and they're going to take everything now. So this is the Ibram X. Kendi approach. You know who Ibram X. Kendi is? So Ibram X. Kendi wrote a book called How to Be Anti-Racist. So if you don't know who he is, you may be familiar with his work, or you probably have worked with someone who has tried to implement his ideas. And his ideas the book is still out. His ideas are terrible ideas. I did a 4-part series on my YouTube channel breaking down his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. That's the book that made him famous. I did a 4-part series breaking down his book because there was so much poor logic in his book that it was amazing to me that book made it through a publisher. It made it through rounds of editing, to get through a publisher. Because I have written books with traditional publishers, and I know what the editing process looks like. And they were fact checking. The publishers, when I wrote a book, they fact checked a whole bunch of things that I said and went back and forth with me like, hey, do you have a source for this? You have a link for this? If you're going to say this, we got to have a source, and we got to have a footnote. Every single thing that I said. My book wasn't even about anything controversial. And this is what they did. This is the editing process. And I'm like, how the hell did this book, Ibram X. Kendi's book, make it through the editing process with all the things that he was claiming that was just straight up bad data? It's not even that he was lying with the data, but he was only going surface level and then not asking the question that would counter the exact points that he was making. I believe the publisher said, this is an opportunity for us to make a lot of money if we put this book out. We're going to just overlook many of the logical fallacies purported in his quote unquote research and just put the book out. And they were right. Again, I don't think these people are dumb. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. And that's how they got that book out. And that book was extremely popular. He sold a lot of copies, and that made Ibram Kendi extremely famous. Now he's kind of fallen off since then. But during that wave, from about 2018 to about 2000, 21 or 22, Ibram X. Kendi was killing it. Now, he has me blocked on X. I never said anything directly to this guy. I don't know how he got me blocked, but he must have came across my YouTube videos and went and found me and blocked me everywhere. I'm assuming that's what happened. I never said anything to the guy. The point, I'll get to him again in a second. So everybody knows that what DEI means is that you are going to de-emphasize white people in general, mostly white men, and then it's going to be in favor of women, gays, and minorities. All right. Is anybody questioning that? Nobody's questioning that. We all know what the deal is. And this is why what's happened now as the tide has slowly turned, because DEI was at its peak, I think, in 2020. I think that was the peak of DEI. It existed before that. There were people doing diversity, equity, and inclusion in 2015. I remember meeting speakers who said, I remember as a black woman, she said, I'd speak about things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was a term back then, but it wasn't some big thing. Most people didn't care about it. It was in these small pockets and people talked about it and then they just moved on. But then in 2020, we know what happened in 2020. That was the summer of social justice is what I call it. That was the George Floyd thing, went viral. Everybody saw it. Then we heard about Breonna Taylor, which had happened months earlier, but a lot of people didn't know about it. And then that became news. And in the summer of 2020, and we had an election coming up, Donald Trump against Joe Biden, and Joe Biden positioned himself as the person of the minorities and went and got a minority. I'm not even gonna call her black, went and got a minority as their vice president. And we know what happened in 2020. So, or at least we think we know what happened in 2020. And this was the peak of DEI. So after Joe Biden wins 2020, becomes president in 2021, that was the year 2021 into 22. That's when DEI was thriving at its highest possible level. By the way, if you're watching me on TikTok, make sure you follow me on Instagram and my YouTube channel. The links are in my profile because I've been kicked off of TikTok 6 times in the last 6 months. So just in case it happens again, when I start to get a lot of people watching my streams, I tend to get kicked off. So y'all better make sure you subscribe to my other channels just in case something else, some other shenanigans happen with TikTok. So anyway, after 2022, the tide started to turn a little bit because people are looking at Joe Biden like, what's happening with this guy? Is he awake? People are looking at Kamala like, what is this person doing? What is she saying? Is this even making any sense? And we knew that Donald Trump was looming. We knew that Donald Trump was going to run for president again. And the tide started to turn going into 2023. And then, of course, getting into 2024 when the heat really turned up because Donald Trump started ramping up his campaign. And this is when people started to become more and more, not everybody, but more people became more and more disillusioned / vocal about their disagreement with the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion because we saw how it was being implemented. And this is one of the things that these quote unquote independent platforms, I guess you can include me in that group. This is one of the things that this has been one of the benefits of independent platforms existing is that people like myself can get out here and start explaining these things to everyday folks because many of you have looked at the mainstream media and said, okay, we know these people are not telling us the truth. They're not giving us the whole story. They're giving us, they're slanting everything and everything has a lean to it. And people started saying, okay, let me listen to a podcast. Let me listen to somebody on TikTok. Let me subscribe to somebody's YouTube channel and let's see what these people have to say and how they're breaking it down. And people are realizing, okay, I don't have to tune into mainstream media to find out what's going on. So what's happened is people like myself and hundreds, thousands of others, we're breaking these things down and everyday folks who are consumers of media are saying, oh, well, it's better information over here than there is in these places. It's better information on Joe Rogan or Megyn Kelly than there is on NBC or ABC or Fox. And this is where people are starting to get their information and more people are starting to realize, oh, these people are straight up lying to us. And now we have somebody over there on some podcast or on YouTube who's smart enough to intellectually and logically explain how they're lying and why they're deceiving us. Now I get it. Now I understand. And this has democratized media. And this is not new. Of course, this stuff has been around for 20 years. I've been on social media for 20 years. But it's become more and more popular, especially this decade. Since 2020, it's become much more popular because in 2020, everybody was stuck in their houses, right? During that scamdemic. And we'll talk about that at a different date. So, excuse me. All that being said, more people were able to understand what's the issue with DEI, why do I disagree with DEI, and what should happen about it. And we knew, again, Donald Trump was still looming after what happened in 2020 and his contest of the 2020 election results. So on top of all of these things, okay, so some have said that DEI hiring was created. Some people are probably in my comments right now saying this, and I'll get to the comments when I'm done. They're saying that DEI hiring was created to open up opportunities for people who have been previously overlooked for certain positions. And that makes it a good thing. So taken out of context, if you just say that, again, DEI is not necessarily a bad thing. On top of that, they say, well, there have been unqualified straight white men who've gotten jobs who they didn't work for it. They didn't earn it. They weren't that good. And they were able to get the job just because they were straight white men. These are strong arguments because of who they're connected to, not because they're actually good. Again, I want to be clear. Someone who says just that, they say there are people who have been overlooked because they were a woman or because they were gay or because they were brown. Is that true? Yes, it is. That's true. Even if you're not a fan of DEI, is that true? It is true. And they say, well, there are straight white men who've gotten jobs and opportunities and chances to advance, not because they were good, not because they were high level performers, but just because they were straight white men and they were connected to the right other straight white man who was basically able to hand his friend or his colleague or his golfing buddy or his son or his nephew a job just because they're all in the straight white men, old boys club. Is this true? Yes, it is. That is true. Again, even if you're not a fan of DEI, we can't sit and act like that's not a reality. That is a reality. Both of those are true. However, we're not done. We're not done. The issue lies, again, in the fundamental question. This is the Ibram X. Kendi question. Those of you who didn't read Ibram X. Kendi's book, I suggest you read it. All right, the book is called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And one of the main premises of Ibram's book, and this is that he created a new definition for the word racism. I'm not a fan of anybody redefining a word, basically taking the definition out of the dictionary, changing it up to whatever you want it to mean. And then the thesis of your entire work is based on a definition that is not real, that doesn't exist. That's what Ibram X. Kendi did. He took the word racism, which is defined as a belief that one race is superior to the other just by virtue of the race itself. That's the definition of racism. You look up the word. Now, they've added a bunch of definitions, especially over the last 10 years. But the first definition of racism is that it's a way of thinking. Therefore, whenever I hear somebody accusing another person of racism, I say you can't accuse a person of a way of thinking because you can't read another person's mind. But anyway, he went and redefined racism to say any institution or any entity that produces outcomes that are not equitable between the races, that entity itself is racist. That's his definition. That's right out of his book. I'm paraphrasing it, but that is what he said. And he says, if you have a school, for example, and you got black students and white students, and the white students or the Asian students are producing higher level results than the black students, then that school is racist because the Asian students are producing better results than the black students. So by definition, that school has to be racist. Now, if you're listening to me saying that and explaining it, it sounds kind of silly, right? But I'm not joking. That is in his book. Go read his book. You can see it for yourself. That's what it says. And it'll say something like, you look at America and you got white people and you got black people, and white people have this much accumulated wealth on average, and black people have this much accumulated wealth on average. Well, that must mean that America itself is racist because look at the disparity in outcomes between the white people and the black people. And again, you might think that sounds silly the way I'm explaining it, but again, I'm paraphrasing, but that is in his book. Read his book. That's exactly what it says. So his whole premise of Mr. Kendi, and I'm bringing him up for a reason, the premise of his entire argument is that anywhere that the outcomes between black people and white people, let's just use black and white here, are not equal, then that means the entity itself, the process itself, or the policy that runs the entity are all racist by definition. That's the way he defined the word racist. Now, here's the problem with that. There are several problems. First of all, that book was extremely popular. He sold a lot of copies. Even X. Kendi became famous based off that book. Even though the premises are completely ridiculous, there were a lot of people who were willing and ready to hear that message and willing to eat it up. And a lot of people ate that message up. A lot of them being white people, by the way, to be clear. There ain't enough black people to push that idea as far as it went. Ain't enough black people to push that idea that far. A bunch of white people had to agree with him. He got a lot of white people to agree with him. That was number one. Number two is that with that definition of racism in hand, if you've accepted that as a definition of racism, well, the problem is you can call everything racist. Well, it actually might not be a problem. It might be a good thing depending on your perspective. For Ibram X. Kendi, this was great. This was great. When he got the world to accept that you can call anything racist unless the outcomes are equal between the races or advantageous to black people, and most places you look, you're not going to see that, well, then he can call everything racist. And guess what he did? What do you think he did? He went and started calling everything racist. He started getting consulting fees and speaking fees to go speak at places and tell the white people why they're racist and tell the black people why everything's against them. This is the epitome of what I call race hustling. What is race hustling? And I've done entire videos on this concept, by the way. Y'all can find them on my YouTube channel. Race hustling is anytime a person, usually a black person, but there are white people who race hustle as well. There's a woman named Robin DiAngelo who comes to mind. She wrote a book called White Fragility. Y'all should read that one too. I read Ibram X. Kendi's book twice because I was so amazed at what he said that I had to read it again to make sure that I read what I read. And I read Robin DiAngelo's book. She's a white woman who wrote a book called White Fragility, basically preaching to white people why they're racist. Again, amazing. Read these books. So anyway, a race hustler is a person who takes any situation, finds a way to racialize the situation. In other words, to make race the main reason why this situation is the situation. So they take something that happened and they make it about race as the main thing. And then they go and tell other people, hey, this situation is happening because of race. And what makes them a race hustler, because there are a lot of race baiters out there, and y'all know people on social media who are always talking about race and they get likes on their posts and all that. What makes them a race hustler is the business element. The business element is what makes them a race hustler. Ibram X. Kendi was, and maybe he still is, he's died down a little bit, but in that period, from about 2018 to about 2022, this dude was the #1 race hustler in America. And I'm not saying that as a pejorative, I'm saying that as a compliment. He was #1 race hustler in America because he was making money from taking every subject, making it about race, and then monetizing it. See, what makes you a race hustler is that you can monetize your race hustler. See, it's one thing to talk shit about race on TikTok. There's another thing to talk shit about race, and then you got colleges paying you speaking fees, and you're doing book publishing deals, and you're doing keynote speeches. See, that's what makes you a hustler. See, if you're just talking about it, you're just a race baiter, or you're just talking shit. But if you're making money off of it, now you're a hustler. Now you got the business going into this. So the most famous race hustlers of all time, the godfathers of race hustling, those would be Mr. Al Sharpton and Mr. Jesse Jackson. All of you know who they are, right? They're the godfathers. They're both still alive. They're like the grandfathers of race hustling. And then they spawned all these other people. So you got Ta-Nehisi Coates, you got Tamika Mallory, you got Ibram X. Kendi, and several others. You got even white people jumped into the race hustling, like Robin DiAngelo. And was it Robin DiAngelo in the Matt Walsh documentary? That was her, right? Yeah, that was Robin DiAngelo. So if y'all didn't see that Matt Walsh documentary, Am I Racist? He paid Robin DiAngelo a fee. He did the interview, took the money, which was, I believe it was either $10,000 or $20,000 that he had to pay to talk to her. And then she wrote a post on her website after the clip came out that she was in the documentary. And she claimed that she didn't know who he was, and she didn't know that he was making a documentary about XYZ. I'm skeptical of that position by Mrs. DiAngelo. I think she was just going to take the money from anybody who would give her the money because she's a race hustler. That's her job, is to talk about race and get paid for it. I believe she was taking the money from whoever offered her the money, and then she put that article out to kind of cover her ass afterwards so she didn't look like what she actually is. And again, read her book and draw your own conclusions. So anyway, so the Ibram X. Kendi approach. Now, here's the other thing about Ibram X. Kendi's book, because I told you I was going to tell you two things about the book. The first thing is that he redefined racism and said anything that produces an unequal outcome between races, that thing or the policy or the rules are racist, which again is a ridiculous premise because that allows you to call everything racist. So that's what he said, number one. It's like a 3-year-old who says anything that doesn't work out my way is stupid. So that means anything the 3-year-old doesn't like, we can just call it stupid. And then getting the whole world to agree with you. All right, that's how ridiculous this premise is by Mr. Kendi. The second premise of his book was that, and he says this explicitly in the book, he says the only cure for past racism is present racism. And he said the only cure for present racism is future racism. And that is a direct quote out of his book. So do y'all understand how crazy that is? He's saying that if you believe there was racism in the past, the only way we can fix that is we got to be racist in the present. In other words, we got to balance out the racism from back in the day with racism now. And any racism that's happening now, we got to balance that out with racism tomorrow. That's what he said, and that's explicit directly from his book. The problem with this, there are several problems with that. But again, when he put this out, very few people spoke up and said, wait a minute, that's kind of crazy what you're saying. That's kind of ridiculous what you're saying. What you're saying is there was slavery back in the day. So what are you saying? You're saying that we got to flip the slavery around and black people going to enslave white? What are you saying? What exactly are we supposed to do with this concept? The problem for Mr. Kendi, and this is the reason why he didn't do many interviews. He basically he used the Kamala Harris approach to media before Kamala Harris did it, is that he didn't do a lot of interviews. He refused to be interviewed by anybody who was going to challenge him and ask him critical questions. And there's a reason why, because I offered to interview him on my show, and I don't need to interview people on my show. I wanted to interview him though, because I had a lot of questions. He wouldn't talk to anyone who was being critical of him or anybody who was going to challenge him. Why? Because they would ask some very, what I consider basic questions about his assumptions and about his assertions from his book that he wouldn't really have an answer for without sounding completely ridiculous. And that's why he just didn't talk to anybody. So again, if y'all think what Kamala Harris did during the 2024 campaign was new, that's not new. Is you come out with a couple talking points. You only deal with people, excuse me, who agree with you. You let them continue to push your message for you, and then you don't talk to anybody who's going to question or challenge you in any critical type of way. And if you do this long enough and skillfully enough, you might be able to ride it to success. Even Ms. Kendi wrote it to selling a whole lot of books. Kamala Harris wrote it all the way to, I mean, she came close to winning. I mean, kind of, sort of. I mean, she could have won that election. And she didn't do any interviews with anybody who was going to challenge her. And she almost won the election. Can we just imagine how close she came? And she didn't offer any real critical thoughts. She did a whole lot of interviews. We weren't quite sure what she was saying. We were unclear where she stood on certain things. And it almost worked. But anyway, let's continue. We're talking about DEI here today. And I'm going to take questions and comments at the end. So I think you can tell if you're listening in context, I'm not a fan of these things for several reasons. One, the proverbial thing is that two wrongs don't make a right. So if you believe something wrong happened to you or your people back in the day, do you balance that out by doing wrong to the people who did wrong to your people? You balance that out by doing wrong to them today? It doesn't make sense, first of all, on a moral level, but I'm not a moralizer, so we won't even go into that one. But also doesn't make sense on a practical level because, first of all, when it comes to black folks, even Ms. Kendi is a black man, and let me address the black people here. First of all, we do not have the resources to get into a race war and win it. Black people need to understand that. We don't have the resources. So to win a war, first of all, you need soldiers, you need weapons, you need resources, you need clear strategy, and you need leadership. And when it comes to black people in America, talking about we need to have racism now to make up for the racism from back in the day. And let me ask a question. What if the white people who you claim were racist back in the day and maybe even racist now, what if they say, well, no, we're not going for that? What if white people and black people over here and white people over here and black people say, well, we're going to be racist now to make up for the racism back in the day that you, white man, did to us. And white people say, well, no, we're not going to go along with that. Let me ask a question to black Americans. What you going to do? What are you going to do? Because again, to win a war, you need people. You need resources like guns and tanks and bullets. You need organization. You need strategy, and you need leadership. In which one of these categories can black people win a race war? I'm just asking the question. Black Americans, in which one of these categories would black Americans have an advantage? I don't know. I can't see one. So I understand the concept. Emotionally, I understand the concept of black people and Ibram X. Kendi, what he said in his book, hey, we need to have present racism to undo past racism. The problem is, I told you this earlier, when it comes to the word fair, the word equity, by the way, the definition of equity is fair and impartial. The problem with fair and impartial is that they're subjective terms and they're subjective based on who has the power. Again, if you're a parent, you got a 5-year-old at home, you have the power, so you decide what's fair. It's not a debate between you and your 5-year-old what's fair and what's not fair. At least it shouldn't be, depending on how you're parenting. It ain't with my kids. It's not a debate between me and them because we're not equals. I got the power, you don't. So I decide what's fair, not you. So Ibram X. Kendi saying that, well, this is what's fair. Again, we ain't got the manpower to enforce fairness. And this is one of the problems that I have with academics and intellectuals who get on their platforms, whether in a book, a YouTube channel, social media, etc., and they wax poetic about how things are supposed to go, but they don't give any practical solutions as to how those are supposed to be implemented, especially on a subject like race, a hot button subject like race. How are you going to enforce this, Ibram X. Kendi? Notice he never answered that question. Because he can't answer the question because there's no logical answer to the question. It doesn't make any sense. So writing past racism with present racism doesn't quite add up or quite make sense unless you can get the white people to go along with it. Now, this is where Ibram X. Kendi was actually somewhat successful. He got a lot of white people who consider themselves, quote unquote, allies of black people. That's some of you who are listening to this. I'm sure I got some of you allies in here who consider yourself a helper of black people. And you believe, you may have even bought into the idea that you are inherently racist in some way and or that your ancestors did bad things to black people. So you need to make up for it by doing good things 2 or 4 black people and you are just guilty in your whiteness. I don't think most of you who are listening to this believe that, but I got to believe there had to be a couple of you listening to this who are in that category. Let me address those people. Let me address the white allies who are listening to this right now. All right. Number one, do not pander to black people with that bullshit. All right. That's number one. Okay. If you're white and you believe that there were bad things that white people did to black people back in the day, that doesn't make you wrong. I don't begrudge you for that. I mean, we can look it up. If we are to believe what history says, generally that's an accepted idea that white people did some things to black people that were not good. I will generally accept that. At the same time, if you're in 2025 saying that you need to do something or be something or say something on behalf of black people as a white person, as a way of kind of making up for those past wrongs, I would say no thank you. That's my response to that. No thank you. You can think whatever you want to think and you can say whatever you want to say. I don't control you. But at the same time, I can't remember who it was that said it. I don't know if it was Frederick Douglass or it was Booker T. Washington. It was one of them. And the question was, what should we do? They say America asked the question, what should we do with the Negro? And the answer is do nothing with us. Leave us alone. Let us do what we're going to do. Let us be who we're going to be. And we know that this actually works. If you leave people alone, even if they are already at a disadvantaged position, if you leave them alone, if they have any value, any quality, and any initiative, they will figure out a way to make it work and they will figure out a way to thrive on their own, even if they're starting 10 steps behind everybody else, like black people in America. How do we know this is true? In the period after slavery ended and before civil rights ended, which was about 100 years, let's just say 100 years, from 1860 roughly to about 1960, there were no and live how they wanted to live, but there were no civil rights still. You had Jim Crow in the South, and black people generally didn't have any, there were no structural setups in the government designed to help black people catch up from the fact that white people had a head start on us in America. We all know this is true. And it was about 100 years while this was going on, right? During that 100-year period, black people went from down here and started moving up. Black people started building their own communities, building their own businesses. We had families that were intact. There were 2-parent households with man, woman, child in the house. We were doing well educationally. We were starting to build up our own wealth. We were doing all of our things as a community on our own in America. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Were there still some tragedies that happened, like Black Wall Street and many other things? Absolutely. But as a whole, in general, were black people figuring it out and getting their footing in America, even without civil rights after slavery? Yes, they were. That's an absolute fact. Nobody can say that that wasn't happening. That was happening. What happened then after that? Well, we got a white savior who actually had the power to do stuff, and he decided to start doing stuff. Some of you know who that person was. That person was President Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. He came out and he said, well, we need to create some policies to help black people out. And he gave some speeches in the vein of what later became Barack Obama, where he used flowery language that sounded really good and touched the emotions of the right people as to why we need to do these things. And he did a very good job of pitching this to the American people, and American people bought it, hook, line, and sinker. We need to do things to help black people catch up. All right, they can't be starting from behind. Somebody else already started 10 levels ahead of them. We got to help black people catch up somehow, some way. And a bunch of black people said, yeah, that's what we need. So what happened is the government started implementing a whole bunch of policies designed to help black people, one of them being welfare, for example, and several other things. The problem with these policies that, depending on who you ask, those of you who are historians, there are divided opinions about this. Some people believe that Lyndon Baines Johnson did this because he genuinely wanted to help black people, and his policies, just the implementation of the policy, went against the grain of what he thought it was going to do. It basically ended up the real life altered the lab test. Some people believe that he did have positive intentions and it just didn't go right. Others believe, and I think everybody agrees they didn't, everybody I think generally agrees these policies did not really help black people. They were supposed to help black people, but they didn't. Because what happened after these policies got implemented, we'll come back to LBJ in a second, is that the black family got destroyed. And this was the worst piece of it. If you were to ask me today, you put me in a crowd in front of 10,000 people and say, Dre, what's the number one issue in the black community in the United States today? The issue is lack of 2-parent households, period. Nothing else goes above that. Number one issue in the black community is the lack of 2-parent households. So anyway, what happened with these policies, one of the main things that happened as a negative result of LBJ's policies, whether you believe he intended to do this or not, was that the black family got destroyed. 2-parent households got destroyed. Why? Because welfare incentivizes a woman to be single. That you can get this government assistance. With the government, we will give you money, but only if there is no man in the house with you. That was the policy. You can get the welfare if there is no man in the house. If there's a man in the house, we, the government, are cutting you off from our money. We're not giving you any money. You got to go make your own. But if you don't have a man in the house, kick the man out. We'll give you money. This is what happened. And unfortunately, this is human nature. There's not saying specifically about black people, just human nature, because white people are on welfare too. Was that black people bought this and said, well, I'd rather kick the man out the house and get free money from the government than have a man in the house, and I and we got to go get our own money. Again, this is just human nature. If you say to somebody, okay, I will subsidize you and you don't have to do any work if you do this, or if you don't go this way, you got to do your own work and make your own money. A lot of people are going to take the option of being handed money without having to do any work. Why? Human nature. Humans are by nature lazy. Not black humans, any human. By nature, humans are lazy. And this was offered, incentivized to black people, and a lot of black people took it. This destroyed the black family. This destroyed the black community. We used to have a very high percentage, I don't have the numbers in front of me, a very high percentage of two-parent households in the black community before civil rights, before we had civil rights, before Martin Luther King and all that. We had a very high percentage of two-parent homes in the black community. That number has plummeted every year since the civil rights movement in the last 60 years. That's the biggest thing that happened to black America. And again, did LBJ do this on purpose to destroy black people, or was he trying to help and it just didn't go right? What the result is, we know it didn't go right. Black people to commit fealty to the Democratic Party. And again, depending on who you ask, some people say that LBJ was quoted saying, I'll have those N words voting Democrat for the rest of their lives. Some people say that he said it. Some people say he didn't say it. There's an argument about it. It's not on tape. We'll never know. The point being that I do believe that LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, not LeBron James, LBJ, I do believe that he politically was trying to get something out of this, because nobody does something for nothing. Him being a Democrat, and this is something I've explained to many of you, that Democratic presidents, even Republican presidents, they play the long game. So yes, they do things that they're trying to get done during their 4 years, but they also do things to help the party itself for the future. So there were some things that Lyndon Baines Johnson, I believe, the policies that he started implementing, he understood, and he had a lot of smart people around him who explained to him, hey, some of the results of these policies are not going to be felt until you are already out of office. He understood that. And he understood that putting these policies in place and making sure that Americans understood, we, the Democrats, did this for you, is going to make black people vote Democrat forever. And who was born in the 1960s? My parents were. Some of you had parents who were born in the 1960s. And guess who my parents vote? Democrat. My parents are staunch Democrats. They've been Democrats their entire lives. Maybe they've once in a while dipped out of the Democrat and voted for a Republican. For the most part, they're Democrats. Now, why are they Democrats? Is it because logically they look at what the Democrats do and say the Democrat is just a better choice than the Republican? No. It's because they were emotionally engaged in this conversation that was given to them by the government, that we are doing more to help you than the Republicans are. You got to vote for us. And there are black people out there over the age of 60 who've been voting Democrat their entire lives because you are emotionally connected to the Democrats, not because it logically makes any sense. So this is one of the long plays that LBJ played. This is a great long play for him. There's another thing I was told, if you take it to contemporary times, Kamala Harris. You heard Kamala mention during the campaign, she kept mentioning a pathway to citizenship. She used that phrase over and over again. What did pathway to citizenship mean? It meant the immigrants who were coming here and getting granted legal status within a few days or a few weeks, when we know that to get legal status the old way before the Biden administration took years, sometimes a decade to get citizenship in America. They were helping people get legal status in a few days, and she kept mentioning a pathway to citizenship. What does that mean? Pathway to citizenship means she wanted to create a faster track to help those immigrants who have legal status become full citizens. Now, if they become a full citizen, what does that mean? They become a full citizen, it means they can vote. And if they can vote, who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for the party that got them into the country and got them legal status and got them citizenship. Who was that? The Democrats. That was a long play for Kamala, because Kamala wouldn't be around to reap the benefits of all of that. Maybe this election and the next one, because she could have got 2 terms. But really, this is a long play for like 2040, 2050. That's the long play that she was playing for the Democratic Party. And depending on who you ask, Kamala may have just been a puppet for the people really running the Democratic Party, and she was doing it because they told her to do it. We don't know. Again, just speculation. But was this a long play? Yes, it was. Now, going back to LBJ. Back in the 1960s, there was a report called the Moynihan Report. Some of you are familiar with this report. And there was a guy who was basically commissioned by the LBJ administration to find out what's going on with black people in America. Because LBJ, I believe, on some level at least, gave a damn about what was happening with black people in America. And again, on some level at least, he had some positive intentions about wanting to help black Americans. Again, whether you think he was doing this perniciously and maliciously, or you think he was doing it intentionally because he really wanted to help, I believe on some level he was trying to help. So to get this guy Moynihan to write a report about black Americans, what's going on with black people in America. And you can find this report. It's still available online. I think I got it saved in my Google Drive. Let me see if I can find it. And anyway, Moynihan, if I can remember how to spell his name. So he comes out with this report. And in the report, he generally says that the black Americans, they got to keep the family together. That's one of the conclusions that he came to, amongst other things. One of the main conclusions this guy came to was that the black Americans need to have families together. They will be in better shape than if the families fall apart. That was one of the main conclusions of his report. I can't find the document, but anyway, let me see if I can find it. I know it's available online because I found it online years ago. It was, if I can remember this man's name, Moynihan Report. Yes, it's called the Moynihan Report, officially titled, this is the official title, The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. So this is written in 1965 by Daniel Patrick Moynihan. It analyzed black poverty in the United States. It argued that the rise of single mother families in the black community was a significant barrier to economic and political equality. And this conclusion sparked considerable controversy and debate. Here's what happened. When Moynihan came out with that report, the LBJ administration, or at least the people around LBJ, they basically suppressed this thing and they struck it down. They didn't want the public to know about this. That's what happened. They didn't want the public to know. They didn't want black people to know about this report. So instead, LBJ comes out with his initiatives and the things he's going to do to help black people out while not giving them the news that Moynihan said, the main thing, and again, this is 1965, folks, 60 years ago. The main thing he said is that single mother families in the black community is a significant barrier to economic and political equality. So if you're black, listen to this, or you're white and you want to help black people out, the main thing black people need in 1965, the main thing we need in 2025 is 2-parent households, period. And when this document came out 60 years ago, the government did not make sure that everybody knew about it. Instead, they said, well, let's come up with some other stuff. Again, I'm glossing over a whole lot of things here, but that's pretty much what happened. Y'all can read about this on your own. There's every president that's been out, there's been 50 books written on them. Y'all can go read them. The whole point here, folks, is reversing all these bad things that have happened in the past. And if a person was to do something bad, that something bad has to happen to them in exchange. Now, there are some areas of life in which that does occur, but we can't do that as a whole with people because we would end up in chaos. And again, black people ain't prepared to win a race war. So, excuse me. Another piece of this is just the built-in unfairness that is a part of human life. Humanity is unfair. By definition, is unfair. All right, depending on where you live, there are certain things that happen there that don't happen in other places. In the middle of the country, like Oklahoma, there are more tornadoes than there are in Manhattan. If you live in South Florida like I do, every year we get the season of tropical storms and hurricanes, but you don't get tropical storms and hurricanes in Tacoma, Washington. If you live in California, there's a possibility of an earthquake, but I've never heard of there being an earthquake in Detroit, Michigan. The whole point is in different places and in different areas and for different people, there are different circumstances. We cannot manufacture equality and equity amongst human beings. That's impossible. Why is it impossible? It's impossible because no matter how many handouts you give to people, everybody gets to make their own choices. And see, this is a conversation you hear black people talking about reparations, right? You hear black people always talking about reparations, and Spike Lee pandering over the weekend. Y'all might have saw this picture Spike Lee has on his jacket that says, "We want our 40 acres and a mule." For those of you who don't know what that means, that's actually the name of Spike Lee's company. His company is called 40 Acres and a Mule, and this was back 40 years ago. But allegedly, when black Americans got freed in the United States, they were promised by the government, you're going to get 40 acres and a mule, like a mule, a donkey, and 40 acres of land to make up for what we did to you. So you have something to start out with in America. And a lot of black Americans say, well, look, when other cultures and other races come to America, they get handed things, but we didn't get handed anything. America owes us stuff. And this is an argument that has been going on for decades amongst black Americans. The conversation then becomes, do black people get owed a financial payment? Like, should the government just give every black American who can trace their roots to slavery a $5 million as a makeup? Should they do that? Or could you say, hey, black Americans have already been paid back by all the government programs that have been implemented since the 1960s to help black Americans out? Those are the reparations. Depending on who you ask, you can get different answers. The point is, and the reason I'm bringing this up when I say you can't manufacture equality is, let's say the government decided they're going to give everybody money. Y'all remember that Dave Chappelle skit when there was reparations? Any of you remember that? When Dave Chappelle had the little sketch comedy thing about black people got reparations, and then it was just a funny little show of what black people were doing with all the money. Y'all remember that on Dave Chappelle? And I want to tell you that that's what Dave Chappelle showed is it's ridicule, it's satire, but that's pretty much how it will go. If you were to give all Americans, all black Americans, let's say $1 million. Let's say every black American got $1 million check tomorrow. Everybody got $1 million deposited in their account tomorrow. So everybody's $1 million richer, no matter how much you had before. Let me tell you what will happen over the next 5 years. Within 5 years, and it wouldn't even take that long generally, but let's just say 5 years, all the people who are before the money, who are already rich, would be even more rich. All the people who are doing well will be still doing even better. All the people who are broke will be broke all over again. Why? And this has nothing to do with the people being black. If you did this with white people, Asian people, it doesn't matter. Why? Because human choice. You cannot manufacture equality when humans have their own free will to make their own choices. So no matter what you do to try to set somebody up for success, if they don't want to be successful, they will find themselves back in the struggle. How many of you listening to this have ever tried to help somebody become successful and failed, despite your best efforts? Put me if that's ever happened. How many of you listening to this have ever tried to help another person become successful? You knew exactly what they needed to be successful. You knew exactly what they needed to do. You had the resources to help, and you tried to set them up for the success, and you failed to help them become successful. And hopefully you got a lesson in that process. The lesson is what I'm explaining to you here. You cannot manufacture success in a human being. You cannot manufacture equality or equity in human beings. You know why? Because you can't control their choices. You can't control the choices that a person makes. You can hand them money, but you can't control what they do with the money. You can put them in a nice neighborhood, but you can't control the fact that they find their way back to the ghetto. All right, you can't do it. You can't make somebody be something that they don't want to be. It's impossible. You can't do it. So this is the problem with the government programs that LBJ started, and every president since then has continued many of these government programs, especially the Democrats, because they position themselves as, we're going to help black people out. So let me make a new policy to help black people out. This is one of the biggest challenges I had of people who were supporting Kamala Harris during the 2024 campaign, because Kamala, when she saw that her momentum was slipping, because she had a ton of momentum for like 2 weeks, right? Remember when she first jumped in and people were like, oh my God, look at all the joy and the energy, and this is amazing. Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. Look at Kamala's campaign. There's no way she's going to lose. She's going to dominate Trump. Look at all the engagement she has on social media. No, we saw how that turned out, right? But anyway, during the first 2 weeks, she was killing it, right? Or at least it appeared that she was killing it. And then when her momentum started to slip, people got over the honeymoon period. She started to come out with, she was grasping at straws. She was trying to come out with things that would really entice black people to vote for her, because it was obvious she was not dominating the black vote the way that she needed to. Now, of course, just getting the black vote alone is not going to win you an election. But if you are black, or at least you're presenting as black, which was Kamala was doing, such as Barack Obama, you need to win all the black vote. Every black person who votes should be voting for you. And Kamala could see by her internal polling numbers that was not happening. A lot of black people were not supporting her, despite the fact that she was black. I'm using air quotes. So what she started doing is start putting out all these things that she claimed she was going to do for black people when she won the election. My problem with the things that she said was not specifically about the implementation or the feasibility of the things she said she was going to do. My problem with it, and I was telling people this on social media, on X, is that we don't want more help from the government. So everything that Kamala was saying was making me say more and more like, no, don't do that. We don't want more help from the government. I don't want the government helping me do anything. Personally, I don't want the government's help for anything. I don't care who the president is. Trump, Obama, Biden, Kamala, whoever. I don't want the government involved in anything that affects my success. I want the government away, hands off and not bothering me. Stay out of my way. I don't want any help from the government. I don't want, so the things that Kamala was throwing out there was, we're going to give this to first time home buyers, and we're going to give this to black men so they can invest in cryptocurrencies or some dumb shit that she was saying. And we're going to give this money to people to start a business, because you can't start a business with just $5,000. You need like $25,000 or $30,000 to start a business. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? She has no idea what she's talking about. You can start a business with $0. And when she was doing interviews saying this, so you can't start a business with just $5,000. Like, what? What business are you starting that you need more than that you need $5,000 period? You can start a business on the internet for no money and be profitable by the end of the day. What are you talking about? Who is advising her? And again, these are the things that she was throwing out there, saying she's going to do these for black people. And black people, at least a lot of the gay black dudes that were working for her campaign, while she had a bunch of gay write it. Oh, look at all these things Kamala's going to do for black people. And then when Trump wins, you got people saying, well, see, Kamala could have did all this for black people, but y'all decided to vote for Trump. I don't want any politician doing anything for me. I just want them getting out of my way. The only thing I want a politician doing is getting out of my way, including a Republican president. Just get out of my way. I don't want you involved in my life or especially not my business. But anyway, moving on. So this unfairness, folks, and I'll get through these points in a second, then I'm going to take questions. Every group, regardless of who they are, every group that lives in America right now, all of you, wherever you come from, whether it's been something you can remember or you had to trace your lineage back, every group has dealt with some level of unfairness and injustice at some point in your history. Dealing with that unfairness and finding a way to persevere despite the unfairness is what makes a group stronger. As the saying goes, hard times make for strong people make for good times make for weak people make for struggling times, and now we got to create strong people all over again. If you're a part of a group that's never been through any kind of struggle or strife, then you're going to have a very weak society. And when you have weak societies, you get calamities, you get crazy things happening, and you get destruction. And black folks, if you are of the belief that there's been a struggle for black people over the years and back through slavery and going back through lineage, et cetera, well, those struggles are what make people tougher, stronger, and better. You don't go through a struggle, you can't get better. You don't lift weights, you can't have muscles. You ever go to the mall and you see somebody with big muscles? How'd they get those muscles? Were they just naturally born with muscles? No. You know they lift weights. I can look at somebody and say, all right, he works out. She goes to the gym. He knows how to lift. Why? Because they got muscles. You can't get muscles without lifting, folks. You got to go through some struggle. You got to go through some type of challenge. If you want to set a situation up, or you want someone to set a situation up through which you have no struggle, no challenge, nothing's hard, and everything is easy for you, you want to manufacture that type of ease, relaxation, and comfort. First of all, ease, relaxation, and comfort are for women and children. They're not for men, number one. And men are the ones who run society. Men guide society. Society moves one way is because men are going that way. And that's why the election of 2024 was a referendum on where society is going, specifically with the men. Had Kamala won that election, we were headed for hard times, very, very hard times. And we may still get hard times now because Trump only gets 4 years. But had she won that election, I'd say we're headed for hard times because we have a weak society. That between these two people, this is who we chose. That would be, it'd be a referendum and say, oh, this is what America wants. Okay. Luckily, it was clear that we wanted something else and we got Trump. And again, I'm not saying that Trump's perfect, but between the two options, he was the better option. And the rest of America agrees. He was the better option. And we were headed for some hard times already. And Trump has made it clear. All right, everything he's doing, there's a trade-off. So the whole tariff argument, there's a trade-off to that. Trade-off to tariffs is that price is going to go up, at least temporarily, until everybody else gets on board, the other countries, and they will get on board because we got all the power. So giving a handout to a person or a group as a way of, quote unquote, fixing things from the past, this has been tried, ladies and gentlemen, in case any of you didn't know. The premise of DEI is not new. That you have a group of people who've had bad things happening to them in the past. So let's set things up such that they can have good things manufactured for them or directed to them in the present to make up for the calamities of the past. This is not new. DEI is not the first time this has been tried. It's been tried before with different names going back 60 years. This is not new. And guess what happened every time it's been tried? Every single time it has failed. Every single time it has failed. You hear people talk about DEI and affirmative action. Who do they say has mostly benefited from DEI and affirmative action? Statistically, it's been white women. So DEI was supposed to help black people, and white women have benefited the most from it. And what they say, Barack Obama was president. Now, who they say Barack Obama helped the most when he was president? It wasn't black people. It was the rainbow people. All right, that's who we helped most as president. The point being that anytime you put all your eggs in a basket of some government entity doing something to help you, it usually doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to work out. Real life differs from the lab test. The government is not going to be able to manufacture an outcome for you. You must go out there and earn it. All right, this is the world that I come from, and this is the reason why I talk about the things that I talk about. I come from a world where you have to actually earn. I come from the sports world. In the sports world, I'm talking about on the field, not coaching, not the front office. On the field and on the court, you either can play or you can't. You earn it with your performance. And if you can't perform, you won't play. Period. There's no DEI in sports. All right, there's no inclusion on the basketball team. The New York Knicks are not going to sign some 5'7" Asian just so they can be diverse. All right, they ain't doing it. They're picking the best players. And if it happen to be 12 black guys, there's going to be 12 black guys on the basketball team. That's how it works. If the San Francisco 49ers, they're picking the best players. They're not going to put a woman on the team just to say they got a woman on the team. Actually, you're going to not even say that. Maybe they will. But y'all get my point. Generally, they're picking the best players. Why? Because they got to compete. And to compete, you got to pick the best. Whoever the best happens to be. Whoever the best happens to be, doesn't matter. I remember when I was a kid, I was like 5, 6 years old. We used to play two-hand touch football in the driveway. And there was this guy who lived down the street. He was older. His name was Ernest. And he would play quarterback. And he would like call a play for us. He would say, you do this, you do that. He would tell each one of us what to do, what route to run when we were playing football. And then one of us would ask him, we would say, Ernest, who are you going to throw the ball to? He would always answer the same way. He said, I'm going to throw it to whoever's open. That's the way it works. I'm going to throw the ball to whoever's open. It's not like I'm planning, I'm going to throw it to you this time, then I'm going to throw it to you. Then next, all right, they both got to pass, and now I got to throw one to you. Bullshit. See, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. That doesn't work in sports. In sports, you throw the ball to whoever's open. And if the same guy is open over and over and over again, he's going to get all the passes. In basketball, we don't take turns shooting. When the Chicago Bulls played back in Michael Jordan's day, they didn't take turns. It's not like, all right, Jordan got a shot. Now Pippen, you get a shot. Now Dennis Rodman gets a shot. Then Steve Kerr gets a shot. Then Tony Kukoc gets a shot. It didn't work that way. This wasn't equal opportunity. It was designed for everybody to touch the ball. Deal that when it gets to nut crunching time and time to win the damn game, we give him the ball to number 23. Why? Because he's the best player. See, there's no DEI in sports. In sports, the best players get all the rewards. Who's the best tennis player? Well, it was Serena. Did she get all the rewards? Yes, she did. Who was the best golfer? Tiger Woods. Did he get all the money? Yes, he did. Who's the best basketball player? Jordan. And then in the next generation, there was LeBron. All right, did they get all the rewards? Yes, they did. This is the only aspect of life in which the best performers tend to get most of the rewards is sports, because the meritocracy is the closest thing to a meritocracy you'll ever see. Now, of course, you get some exceptions every now and then. You got LeBron James' son in the NBA. All right, that's an exception. But most of the time, you don't get that. Most of the time, the best performers get in and the worst performers get kicked out. Natural selection. Now, in the business world and in the government world, it's a lot trickier. So that's not to say that people who win in business and in government are not necessarily good, but many times they're not. You just have to know the right person. In the business, sports world is a meritocracy. The best performers win. The business and corporate worlds are politocracies, meaning whoever plays politics the best, is a strategocracy, whoever has the best strategy. And it's about strategy, is about politics, and about who you know. Who knows who? Strategies and politics. That's the way the business world works. And listen, I'm a former athlete in the business world. I understand this. I understand that there's a different game that I have to play to be successful in business, not just about being good. Because if it was just about being good, then a lot of things would be different. All right, there are people singing in local cabarets for $100 a night who can sing better than Taylor Swift. But Taylor Swift is famous. Is it because she's the best singer? No. It's because she got the right connections, the right places, and the right strategy. That's the way business works. I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I'm saying it as a reality. And you have to make these adjustments. You got to know what game you're in. That's why my company is called Work on Your Game. Part of working on your game is, first of all, understanding what game are you in. And when you know what game you're in, now you deconstruct and you make your adjustments based on how do I win this game? Not let me just do what I want to do and then be mad when I don't get the outcome that I want. No, you got to play the game the right way. You can't play basketball the way you play football. You go to a football game with basketball skills, you're going to get your head knocked off. You go on a basketball game with football skills, you're going to be on the bench because you can't play. So you got to know how to play the game that you're in. And when you understand this, then you can make the necessary adjustments. So let me continue. A couple more points here, and I'm going to take questions. So the biggest beneficiary, as I said, of DEI has been white women. White women have benefited more from DEI than black people, and DEI was ostensibly designed to help black people out. So the point being, this is not a condemnation of white women. The point being that anytime an entity, such as especially the government, who is very inefficient in doing anything, government doesn't do anything efficiently except collect tax dollars. That's probably the only thing it does efficiently, nothing else. Anytime an entity tries to manufacture an outcome, it always fails. Did everybody hear that? I'm using the government as an example, but all of you can apply this in your own situations, in your own lives. Anytime you try to manufacture an outcome amongst human beings, you will fail. Now, if you try to manufacture an outcome with a bunch of robots and drones, you can do it because robots and drones don't make their own choices. But anytime you try to manufacture an outcome with people, it will fail, guaranteed. I'll give you a story. Quick anecdote. When I was like 10 years old, I was at my aunt's house and I have a cousin. Her name is video game. So we went to the video game store and rented a video game, and it was like a hockey game. And I had never played the game. My cousin Laura had never played the game. We're at my aunt's house. My aunt's name was Debbie. So Debbie is Laura's mom. So we're playing the video game. Neither one of us had ever played it before, but I was pretty good with just video games, period. So I was pretty good at kind of like picking up on how to play. So I picked up how to play the game faster than my cousin, and I'm beating her at the game. I'm just kicking her butt at the game, and she's getting frustrated, and her mom is watching us play, and I could tell my aunt, her mom, is getting frustrated watching her daughter get beat by her nephew, beat by me. So in the hockey game, you can have fights. So our players start fighting in the video game, and I'm beating up her player. And Laura's like, well, tell me how to do the fighting. And I didn't say anything. I'm just laughing because I'm beating her. And then she turns to her mom and says, Mom, he didn't tell me how to fight. And her mom was waiting to do something. So her mom goes and hits the reset button. And she says, well, then we'll just have to start the game over. And then she just gave me this look. She like glared at me like she was giving me my penalty for beating her daughter. And I'm just looking at her. I don't say anything. So we start playing again. And what do you think happened when we started playing again? I start kicking her ass again. I just beat her again. And she picked the team that I was using because she thought that the team I was picking had some kind of superpower. She picked that team, then I beat her anyway. The point being, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot manufacture an outcome. See, if you're a bum, you're going to be a bum no matter what the government does because you're going to find a way to be a bum because a bum has no choice but to be a bum. And a winner is going to find a way to win no matter what anything does to or for or against them. So this whole concept of DEI, specifically to the black Americans who are listening to this right now, if you're actually good, you will find a way to win. You don't need DEI. So don't be mad that DEI is collapsing and going away because it is collapsing and going away. Don't go and say, well, I'm not going to shop at Target because they don't have DEI policies anymore. You sound stupid. So what, you going to go pay extra for paper towels because you don't want to shop at Target? Who are you helping in doing that? You're not doing anything. All right, you'll be right back at Target in 6 months. The whole point being, folks, if you can perform, this is a performance-based business. Life is a performance and results-based business. What does that mean? That means that when you pass away and there's an obituary about you in the newspaper or on the internet, or when you have a funeral, any of you been to a funeral, they give out a little pamphlet, like it's like a little 2-page pamphlet, right? It's your picture on the front. It has the date the year you were born, the year you died. It has your name. And it maybe has a location of where your funeral's at. And then on the inside, what's on the inside? The inside is just basically your life story in about 5 paragraphs. Those 5 paragraphs are going to list what you did. Not what you could have did. Not what you almost did. Not what you might have done had there been a fairness for you. Not what you were thinking about doing, but racism held you back. All is going to go in those paragraphs. And that little pamphlet, the day that you have your funeral, is what you accomplished. None of the other shit. None of your stories. What you accomplished. And if you accomplish nothing, there ain't going to be nothing in there. Period. That's what it's going to be. And when they bury you later on that day, you're going to have a headstone or a tombstone, whatever you get, if you get buried. And it's going to have maybe like a sentence or two about your life. A sentence or two about your life. Not an explanation, a sentence or two of what you achieve. And that's it. And if you achieve nothing, and they ain't gonna say nothing. It's just gonna have years, and your whole life becomes that little dash. With the year you were born, 1970, and the year you died, there's gonna be a little dash in between. That's it. That's all you get. So as I already explained to you all, my background is in the sports world, and my worldview is based on the fundamental principles of how sports works. In sports, what you get, you have to earn. You have to prove yourself through objectively measured performance, because the judge in sports is a scoreboard, not a human being. And yes, relationships help, connections help. Anything that's subjective and based on human win, they all help. But in the end, if you can't play, it's going to be obvious. All right, again, you want to see it? Look at LeBron James' son. All right, if you can play, it's going to be obvious. And if you can't play, it's also going to be obvious. You will be sussed out by the system. The system will suss you out because the system is objective. See, the system is not subjective. Anything that's run by humans And humans make the final decisions is always subjective. And that's why relationships matter. That's why politics matters. That's why you got to learn how to play the game. But in the sports world, and only in the sports world, and I'm telling you all this not because I'm telling you to go be an athlete. I'm telling you this because this informs you of who you're to form. In the government, in corporate America, you could be a bum and keep getting moved up if you know the right person and you got the right relationship with that person. Doesn't happen in sports. Never, ever. It's the closest thing to a meritocracy you get is the sports world. Now, you get into the coaching space and the management space in sports, you get all the shenanigans. That's basically corporate. Sports coaching and sports management is corporate America. The field ain't corporate. You got to play. So people's real issue with DEI, all right, we know, is basically because people don't like Donald Trump. It's not that DEI is going away. See, if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris was president and they were dismantling DEI, nobody would care. It wouldn't be news. And they wouldn't dismantle DEI anyway, because then if they were, you wouldn't have Kamala Harris in the first place. But anyway, so combine all this, that people not liking Donald Trump, with the fact that he's doing something that they already have a reason to not like. This is why so many people are so upset about all of this. And let me touch on one last thing here before we get to the questions. People talking about banning of books. Y'all heard about this, the banning of books, that books are getting banned in schools and you can't read this book and your kids can't read that book in school. And people are saying, well, this is the start. This is what any other fascists or any other dictator in history, when they started tearing down societies, the first thing they do is they start banning books. And the H guy from the country with the letter G, with the handlebar mustache, can't say his name, that guy, he started banning books. That's the first thing he did. Then he started doing all these other things. Then he was doing the salute and then all these things, and they're banning books. Okay, let's make something really, really clear. This is especially for those of you who are parents. All right, listen very closely. All right, any book that your kid does not have access to in school, let me give you a secret. You can go on the internet and you can buy it and they can read it at home. All right, so there's no such thing as banned. No book is banned because they can read the book at home. If you are a parent and you're upset that your kid does not have access to book ABC at school, you go on Amazon, buy the book. It'll be there within the next 24 hours. Amazon's 1-day shipping now. You got Prime, right? All right, get the book. And then you sit down with your kid and you read the book. Since they can't read it at school, they can read it at home. So no book is banned. Your kid is not blocked from reading any book. If you know that the book exists, you can go find it. Go find the author. Any author whose book got quote unquote banned in schools, guarantee you they're on the internet bitching about it. Go to their website, buy their book straight from their website. Guarantee you it's available right there on their website. Go buy the book. Now you can read it with your kid. So that problem is solved. No book is banned. And another thing, while we're on the subject, I've done entire lives on this concept, by the way. Y'all can find those on my YouTube channel. And by the way, if you're on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Instagram. The links are in my bio. If you are a parent and there's something that you want your kid to learn, know, or understand, such as your history, your people's history, the history of your religion, a book that you want them to read, etc., that's your job to teach that at home. That's not the school's job. That's not your school teachers. That's not your kid's school teacher's job to teach your kid about your history. This is especially for you black folks, you black parents out there who say, well, I want my kid to understand the history of America and the real history and not the whitewashed history and how slavery was and civil rights and all these terrible things that happen to black people. Because they're your kids, you do what you want. Go buy the books. Go buy the books. Go buy all the books you want your kids to read, put them on the bookshelf in your house, and you sit down with your kid and you read the damn books. Or you read it first, then you tell your kid, you read it, kid, and then we're gonna have a conversation about it because you read the book. How you get mad your kids can't read a certain book? You ain't even read the fucking book. I hear black parents talking about, well, this book got banned in school, my kid can't read it. When's the last time you read a book? Are you mad that your kids ain't reading a book in school? How many books you got in your house right now? Black parents, you mad that your kids can't read a book? How many books do you have on a bookshelf in your house right now? That your kid, if they wanted to read a book, you got one for them. But you talking about what school ain't providing. Miss me with that bullshit. What I know, statistically, this has been shown, that when people get out of school, I'm talking to you adults, when people get out of school, after high school, college, whatever level of school they complete, most people never read a book again voluntarily for the rest of their lives. That's proven. That's an actual fact. That once people get out of school, they never read another book again for the rest of their lives. At least not voluntarily, not on purpose. And here's another thing that a lot of people don't know. Most of the books purchased on Amazon, we know Amazon sells all the books, right? Most of the books purchased on Amazon's website are purchased as gifts. not as books like the person buying the book is buying it for themselves. Most books are purchased as gifts. So you buy a book and you send it to somebody else. In most books, they know this from the digital e-readers, most books never get read past the second chapter. The second chapter. But people are complaining about books. Okay, you read the book first, then you give it to your kid. That's what I would say to any parent out there. Any parent out there, you want your kid to read a certain book, you got to read it first. That'll put an end to that problem. That'll solve that problem right there. All right, I'm talking to every parent of all races who are listening to this right now. Now, if you had to read the book first before your kid needs to have it, then that whole concept of people bitching about books will be over because everybody will get real quiet real quick. All that being said, let's see what we got over here. For whatever reason, YouTube has been giving me trouble here today as far as the connection. I don't know what's happening, but we are, hopefully the recording will be up. We'll make sure that the recording goes up either way. See y'all on Facebook, see y'all on LinkedIn. I don't think I had anything on YouTube. Instagram. I'll come to TikTok in 1 second. So if you got a comment on TikTok, get ready. All right, let's go. Let's go TikTok. What you got? So, by the way, if you are watching me on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and also follow me on Instagram because I've been kicked off of TikTok 6 times in the last 6 months. Usually when I get a whole lot of people watching my streams and I'm usually talking about societal issues, current events, I piss off enough people that I get flagged or kicked off. So make sure you follow me in other places just in case that happens because I will still go live. But if I get kicked off, then I get suspended for like a week and then I can't go live on TikTok at least. All right, so let's see what we got. TikTok comments, I'm reading them. Bishop Chris Worthington said, I'll take a low interest business loan. Hey, me too, Chris. Me too. The general idea, though, is I don't want the government involved in my shit. I don't want the government involved in none of my shit. So that would not be enough to make me say Kamala's a better choice than Trump. That's my point. But I get what you're saying. A human being says she was lying through pandering to people that don't know any better. I think a lot of people did know better. It's just that they emotionally needed a logical justification for not voting for Trump, and they needed a good reason to vote for her. So she was just throwing hooks out there to try to give you a good reason to vote for her. Because emotionally, a lot of people were not voting for Kamala Harris. Most people didn't vote for Kamala. They voted against Trump. Most people didn't vote for Hillary. Most people didn't vote for Joe Biden. Most people did not vote for Kamala. They voted against Trump. I would say Biden was probably the biggest example of that was Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't have any fans. What Trump had was enemies. And the people who hated Donald Trump voted for Joe Biden. That was it. Ruby Doobie says, we almost lost our country. Yeah, it could have happened. CSI said, you don't have to accept the help. That's the beauty of free will. Options are nice. Yes, you're correct about that. The thing is, I didn't want the country as a whole, which I don't control. I don't want the country as a whole to vote for someone who was trying to win by saying, here's all the things I'm going to give to you. I just didn't like that concept. I just didn't like the idea. I didn't like the pitch, is what I'm saying. Pizza Later said, if you're on the internet preaching success, then you probably aren't very successful. Am I preaching success? Are you talking about me? And at the same time, Pizza Later, I would disagree with that because people who teach success and they sell whatever you call success, whether that be fitness, whether it be finances, whether it be business, whether it be personal development, etc. The way that we know about those people is because they get on the internet, because the internet has the most access to the most people the most efficiently. They get on the internet, show people what they have, and demonstrate what they're capable of doing. That's how they get fans. That's how they get customers. That's how they get followers. That's how they get people to come to their events. That's how they get people to buy their stuff. So I get the sentiment that you're trying to push there, that if you're internet preaching success, you probably aren't very successful, but it's actually false. Name those people. How do you know about them? If you don't know them in person, you never actually shook their hand. How do you know they're successful? Because they're on the internet doing what they do. Or what they do gets broadcast on the internet. And that's how you know about it. And people in my line of work, we're all on the internet showing people what we do because it is much more effective for me to sit on the internet and have right now 174 people listening to what I say than me trying to go out in the world and somehow, some way meet each one of you 174 people individually. That would take a lot of time. And I might have a hard time finding some of you. But if I can do it right here, then it's much more efficient for me to reach more people in a shorter period of time. So I see you. I'm Ruko, Skin Fade. Good morning, Michelle Unanian. I know I'm mispronouncing your name. Eve M said, you literally just voted for a dictator. Well, Well, think about that, Eve. Is there such thing as voting for a dictator? Do dictators get voted for? Don't they just assume their position if they're really a dictator? Human beings say every successful person, no matter what color, has faced adversity. That's right. You can't be successful without adversity, because the thing that makes you successful is the fact that you faced a challenge. If you never face a challenge, you can't be successful. By definition. Randy, thank you for the rose. Gunter Pham says, as a Catholic, being a woman, being white, and being young. I don't know what you're referring to there. Kyle said, there is no oppression Obama created. No, I don't think any president has created oppression. No, I don't think any president has created oppression. What I think is some presidents try to create policies that are designed ostensibly to absolve the oppression or bad things, and they always end up failing because you cannot manufacture the success of another person. You can't manufacture the success of one person, let alone 300 million. So you try to do it on a mass scale, it's guaranteed to fail. And a lot of presidents have tried. LBJ tried. Barack Obama tried. Donald Trump, he has a different approach. His approach is not so much about all these things he's going to build and hand to us. You don't hear him saying that. He's talking about all the things he's going to get rid of. A lot of what he's talking about is what he's going to get rid of, which is a good thing because I want less government involvement in all aspects. Ruby said Arab Americans have been through it. Yes, all people have been through it everywhere. Mare says we are born with muscle. LOL. Yeah, well, you get what I mean when I say muscle. People with big muscles, not just muscle, period. Linda said, excellent statement. Every group of people has had hard times. That's correct. Mare or Mare making a point about we're born with muscle. Again, let's not dumb down the conversation. I think you understand the spirit of my point. Do you not? All right. A human being said mindset is the biggest beat down for people. Yes, it is. I agree with that because you can't measure or count your mindset. This is why a lot of people don't value it. Gunter said, would have been so bad. Yeah, I think it would have been. Chris said, DEI is trash. Candy said, we didn't have a choice with her. Well, we didn't have a choice in her becoming the VP and then becoming a nominee. You're correct. But we did have a choice in whether she won or not. So that's why I think America dodged the bullet. Jack says, the truth is struggle should not exist. It isn't the way it was drawn up. Forefathers are screaming. I don't know what you mean by that, Jack. I need you to elaborate on your point. Struggle will always exist because anytime you try to go after something, if you have an ambitious goal, there will be struggle because an ambitious goal, the definition of ambition is someone trying to achieve things that are generally difficult. So if you try to do something difficult, you're going to struggle because it's not going to be easy. Because if it was easy to do, then it wouldn't be worth anything. I already explained that. If everybody can sit at the table has no value. So the fact that you try to achieve something that is ambitious, you must struggle. And the first thing that happens anytime someone decides to do something big is that they get obstacles thrown in their way. And this is the reason why a lot of people don't achieve big things, not because most people are not capable, but because most people, as soon as they face a challenge, they quit. And the people who face a challenge and don't quit and keep going and eventually reach success, they become successful. Those are the people who write books. Those are the people who give speeches. Those are the people who do coaching not because there's anything necessarily special about them inherently, but because when they face challenge and struggle, they kept going and persevered. Whereas everybody else, when they face challenge and struggle, they quit. No one is exempt from this. The difference between the successful and the unsuccessful is just a decision of what do I do when I face a challenge? Do I keep going or do I not? BATC says, why is he the better option? Generally asking what made him more qualified. So I'm not going to address the word qualified because it's a very subjective term. Why was he the better option? He's the better option in my opinion. And why do I believe he's the better option? Not necessarily because he's quote unquote qualified. And what made Trump qualified, just to answer your question, is the fact that he ran for president already once and he won. So what other qualification do you need for someone to be president other than having been president already? What better qualification is there? So if we're comparing qualifications between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, well, Donald Trump has actually been the president. That's more qualification than Kamala Harris. You ever been president? No. So if you're asking that question, there's your answer. But that's not even the question I want to address because that doesn't really matter. Qualification is a very slippery, subjective term. I don't even like that term. Better is, again, my personal opinion because I believe, first of all, Kamala Harris is a government person. She's a career politician. I'm not a fan of career politicians because they only know how to do one thing, which is have the government have more influence and more control over what the citizens are doing. I'm not a fan of that concept in general. Donald Trump is not a politician. He's a business guy. However you feel about his business background is your opinion, but we can all agree he's not a politician. He's not a career politician. He doesn't need a job in politics. He was who he was without politics and will still be who he is outside of politics. And I'd rather have someone like him who's not a career politician running the government, because his mindset is not about let me extend the reach of the government because that's the only thing that makes me relevant. The only thing that makes Kamala relevant is that she's a part of the government, and had she become president, she would have extended the reach of the government because that's the only thing that would make her matter. Donald Trump does not need to extend the reach of the government because he matters with or without the government. That's why I believe he's a better option, just on that alone. Hippie Chick says Trump is for America. Well, that's been his slogan from the beginning. Ruby said they almost flushed the toilet on the U.S. and closed the lid. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. LYD said that's not what DEI is. LYD, I don't know when you came into my live, but I gave an entire explanation of DEI. So I don't know what part you're responding to, but I gave an entire explanation from the very beginning. Dare, what's going on, my dude? Tyre, he said, what are your thoughts on DOGE and the access Elon wants to have on our private information? I did a live on that about a week and a half ago before the conference last week. Tyre was at the conference, so he knows what I'm talking about. But before the conference last week, I did a whole live on that. It's on my YouTube channel where I explain Elon and DOGE and all that stuff. Jack said, smart, sensible guy. Thank you. Linda, good morning. Lith Astrology said, that's not what DEI is. Again, say the same thing again. I gave an entire explanation of DEI at the very beginning of this live. So any of you who came in the middle and didn't hear the explanation, please don't respond to something that I said out of context. I have explained exactly what DEI is. I've explained it what's the word that I would use? Completely. Let's just say that. Lee said, what's your solution? Solution to what? Candy said, how white women, please explain. White women what? What, white women benefited from DEI? I don't know. That's what happened. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but that's what happened. That it has been said that diversity, equity, and inclusion policies benefited and got white women more positions and more jobs than it did actually black people. How that happened, I don't know. I don't have DEI policies, but that's what happened. BATC said, you're confusing reparations versus DEI. No, I'm not. Skin Phase said, if the lab test was good, reality would match. That's false. You can't lab test 300 million people. So the lab test will always differ from reality because you never know how people will actually respond to what you have tested in the lab. It's the same way that somebody builds an app in the app store. Is one thing to have an app in the app store and you think it's perfect. Is another thing when people start actually using the app, you realize that they don't see it the way you saw it. Because if it was that easy that everything in a lab test would work perfectly in real life, then there would be no failures. Everybody, especially smart people, would just, everything they do would succeed. Because all they had to do was lab test it. All right, it's perfect. Put it out in the world. It goes perfectly. When has that ever happened? The answer is never. It's never happened that way. Everything has to meet with real life. And that's when you find out the real problems with the situation. Because if it was that easy to just lab test everything, then again, the people working in academia wouldn't be professors. They'd just be business people. They have more money than Elon Musk because everything they did would succeed because they're smart, right? They know how to lab test, don't they? There'd be no reason for them to come up short in anything. User said, isn't men taking women's medals a DEI move? Well, there's one way you could look at it. Carl Deering said, you're spot on, dude. Thank you. Hippie Chris, that was the way you work hard. Well, shout out to you for working those 3 jobs, no government help. Well, some people have the principle that they're not going to get on the government help because they know once you get on it, it's hard to get off it. Nicole said, problem is that doesn't happen in reality. The one that is more likely to get picked is the white man. Well, it depends on picked for what. And as I just explained, I explained this also, folks, that in the business world, yes, people get picked based on who you know, based on strategy, based on politics, based on relationships. It's not all based on performance. The business world is not about performance. It ostensibly is about performance, but it really isn't. I'm not saying don't be a good performer, but I think I'm a good performer at what I do. But I understand that in business, if I want to do more business, I need to have the right politics. I got to have the right connections. I got to have the right relationships. I got to have the right strategy. And I got to have the right system. That's the other word I forgot. Systems. These are the things that make business work. It's not just being good. If you're just good and you don't have systems, strategies, politics, or relationships, you will fail in business, even if you're really good. There's a burger shop in your town. All of you listen to this. There's a burger shop in your town that makes way better burgers than McDonald's, but McDonald's makes way more money. Why is that? Because it ain't about the burgers. That's the point. There are coffee shops that make better coffee for cheaper than Starbucks. But Starbucks makes more money. Why? Because it ain't about the coffee. Stick Squad said, was that a shot at the Niners? It was really a shot at the NFL. But the Niners, I think if there's a team that does it, it's going to be a team over in that area, if you get what I'm saying. If a team does do that, the Niners might be the one to do it. Maybe the 49ers, maybe Seattle Seahawks might be one who tries it. Who's another team that might do it? Yeah, it'd be one of those teams. It ain't going to be a team in Texas or a team in Florida. No, it'll be a team in California, Washington State. Yeah, one of those teams over there. Y'all know how y'all living over there. I live in South Florida. I live in Miami. So, Just Me says, so. All right, so he's starting the question with so we know what that is. That's a tell for the straw man. But let's see what he says. He says, so you agree with him trying to take over countries that does not belong to him then, right? So what did I tell y'all was coming? As soon as somebody starts a question with so, I already know they're about to straw man me. They're about to take something that I didn't say, rephrase it, and then ask me to respond to something that I never said. So Just Me, I never said that, so I'm not even addressing your question. Come to me with a logical question. Nicole said whether he is most qualified or not. Again, the question is not being qualified. Qualification is subjective. Y'all understand? Qualification is subjective. Any of you, Nicole, we'll just say any women listening to this. Any of you have a husband or a boyfriend? Let me ask you a question. What made him the most qualified candidate for you to become his woman? What made him qualified? Was he the most qualified person available? The answer is yes. How do we know he's the most qualified? Because you chose him. That's what made him qualified. The fact that you chose him made him qualified. So qualification is subjective. It is based on the person making the call. So each one of us as Americans, at least those of you who are Americans who vote, you get to choose who's more qualified. So one voter might walk in and say, well, I think Kamala's more qualified. They vote for Kamala. Next person walks in and says, I think Trump, and they vote for Trump. And then we add them all up and we see who wins. That's the way elections work. So qualification is generally a useless term because, again, I could think qualified, yes. You can think qualified, no. Neither one of us is right or wrong. We're just debating our opinions. But I don't really care if somebody's qualified. I'm just picking who I think is better, and I'll tell you the reason why I think so. I just explained it with Trump. I believe Trump is a better choice than Kamala Harris, and I told you exactly why. War for 3DI said, now we find out they follow a script. So they pick and choose who can comply and can do stunts. Well, I do believe in government that does happen. Do I believe that happens? Yes. I believe Trump I think he threw a wrench in the system in that he's not as easily controllable because he's not a career politician. He doesn't need a career in politics. As opposed to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they all needed careers in politics because they haven't done anything else other than politics. So if they lose their political career, they have nothing. What's Kamala going to do now that she lost the election? She's going to get right back into politics because she don't have any other skills. She's 60 years old. You can't, as they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. She has no other skills. What did Hillary Clinton do after she lost in 2016? And somebody lists for me all the things Hillary Clinton has accomplished ever since she lost in 2016. Good, you all got it right. She's accomplished nothing. She's done nothing. Why has she done nothing? Not because Hillary's a bad person, because Hillary had only one job her whole life, which is being in politics. As soon as she lost, there was nothing else for her to do. She has no other abilities. Those are the people I do not like career politicians because their only thing that they're good at is being in politics. Therefore, if they get into the presidency, the only thing they're going to do is more political stuff, which is expanding the reach of the government, which makes them a more relevant individual because the government has more things to do. Kamala Harris has nothing else that she does to add to society other than being in politics. Hillary Clinton adds nothing else to society other than politics. Barack Obama adds nothing else to society other than politics. Joe Biden adds nothing to society other than doing politics. Without politics, they are nothing. They're nobody. Who's Donald Trump outside of politics? Again, you may not like him outside of politics, but we can agree he had a life and a career without politics. I'd rather a president who has a life and career outside of the political space rather than someone who has nothing else to do, which means they have no choice but to expand because what else are they going to do? No person who has a career in politics is going to shrink the reach of the government because that shrinks the reach of them. It shrinks their own personal significance. They wouldn't do it. So I'm just giving you all a logical explanation about why I rather prefer a non-political person in a political position. And there was something else I meant to say that slipped my mind. I'll come back to it in a second. Oh, yeah. All of you understand, if you read the founding documents of the country and you read stories or listen to stories about how the United States of America was founded, politics was never a full-time job. Politics was not a full-time job. You had a business, you had a life, you had a career, you had a job outside of politics. And then every few days or once a week or once a month, you and the other politicians came and got together. You did the political things to serve the people. You did it as a service to the people, the same way that you might be a dad and you got a 10-year-old and you coach the local soccer team. That's a service. You're not paid for. It's not a career. You service the community by coaching a 10-year-old team because your son is on the team. And then you go back to living your regular life the other 95% of your time. That's the way the government was originally designed to be. It was not designed to be a full-time career where you're making $150,000 a year sitting in Washington, D.C., while you're allegedly a representative of New Mexico or Wyoming or Texas, but you're in Washington, D.C. 90% of the time, but you're allegedly serving Texas. How is that? How are you serving Texas living in Washington, D.C.? And you're making all of your money. Every dollar you make is based on the fact that you hold this political position, which means your main aim by human nature is going to be, how do I win the next election? Not how do I serve the people? How do I win the next election? Because if I lose the election, I lose that 150K. I have no other skills. I don't have any other career. I don't have another business. So what are these people doing? They are incentivized to extend their careers. So when Elon Musk and Donald Trump come in there and they start firing people and saying, you're not going to keep this job and we're going to start looking into where that money's going and we're going to make you actually start earning it or you're going to be out of there. All of you as American citizens should be happy, unless you happen to work in politics or you know somebody who does. Why would you be mad that they're getting rid of people who are basically making their money off of your tax dollars? You don't even know what they're doing. Again, they're supposed to be representing you and your state wherever you live, yet they live in Washington, D.C. They don't even know what's going on where you live because they're not there. They live in D.C. because that's where all the money's at. The money for them. Why would you be happy? Why would you be mad that they're getting rid of these people? I'm happy they're getting rid of them. And right now they're just starting with the salary workers, but they're going to get around to the policies for the elected officials. That's when it's going to get really interesting. Y'all think it's interesting now? Wait till they start getting into these elected officials. None of these people are supposed to being in politics was never supposed to be a full-time job. You are not supposed to have a full-time job working in politics. It's not a thing. Politics is a public service. You are serving the people. Again, it's like coaching the youth soccer team in your neighborhood on Saturdays. You don't get paid for that. You can't make a full-time living doing that. You do it on the side because you're serving. That's what politics is supposed to be. It's supposed to be service. Look at these people now. They're doing it as a job, as a career. What did Joe Biden do for a living? What are Joe Biden's skills? What does Hillary Clinton do? What does Barack Obama do? What do they do? I'm waiting. Somebody answer the question. What Kamala Harris do? What do they do for a living? And y'all think I'm just talking about Democrats. All right, what did George W. Bush do? What did George H. Bush do? What did they do? Without mentioning politics, what do these people do as careers? You can't even name it. They don't do anything. They do nothing. All they do is work in politics and collect the check. That's what they do. Why would anybody get upset about these people losing their jobs? I don't understand that. Unless you happen to be related to them and that money's finding its way to you. Otherwise, I don't understand this. Nicole said DEI helps the most qualified get the job regardless of whether they're white men. No, Nicole, that's false. No, it doesn't. That's the corporate definition, Nicole. So what you said is read straight out of the corporate handbook. So maybe that's where you got it from. I explained this at the beginning of my life. DEI ostensibly does what you said. It helps the most qualified people get the job. The problem is several problems. Number one, qualified is a very subjective term. Who decides who's qualified and who's not? Again, if you come to my company, I have my own criteria for qualification. If we go to your company, you have your criteria for qualification. So it's extremely subjective based on whoever's talking, what's qualified and what's not. Because I could be unqualified at this company. I go to the company next door and now I'm perfectly qualified. What's the difference? Qualification is not objective. It's highly subjective. So that term doesn't really mean anything. That's my whole point. I said this at the beginning of the live. So it's a very variable term. You could be qualified today and unqualified tomorrow because the CEO got switched out. So the old CEO wanted these things. The new CEO wants these things. Now all of a sudden you're not qualified. So people throw that term around. People use the word qualified more emotionally than logically because logically the term doesn't mean anything at all. Willie's Media LLC said, I challenge your premise. Okay, well, you just said that, but you didn't say what the challenge is. Leave the challenge. Put the challenge in your comment. Donna said, yeah, all that planned out for us too. Nurse says, sir, I can tell. Nurse 0708 says, sir, I can tell you hate your skin. Can tell you only deal with non-black women. Self-love, bro. Okay. So you say. So this is an emotional comment that people say that so black people will say this to another black person. If you challenge anything that's supposed to be like a black person's supposed to go along with, like DEI, they'll say, oh, well, you hate being black. Yeah, okay. Ruby said, Trump is clearing the field. Now that I agree with. Yes, he is. Viv says, sports is a poor analogy when DEI was mainly threaded into corporations or federal agencies. It's not an analogy, Viv. First of all, it's reality because I played professional sports for 10 years. I'm not giving you an analogy. I'm telling you the reality. And secondly, I'm not analogizing sports to the corporate world. I clearly, is anybody else listening to me? Can y'all co-sign what I'm just saying? Did I analogize sports to the corporate world? No, I said it's the exact opposite. I said sports is not corporate because you have to perform. And there's no other aspect in life where performance alone will get you the win. In the corporate world, performance alone is not the main thing. You can be a really good performer in business, but if you don't have the right politics, the right relationships, the right strategy, and the right system, you will lose. So Viv, I don't know what you were listening to, but it damn sure wasn't me because that's not what I said. Willie's said, let me challenge you. So Willie's, you're leaving these comments, but you're not saying what your challenge is. Say your challenge. Put it in the comment, whatever your challenge is, so we can see if you got any substance or not. War said, used to be who will comply with the agenda. Well, it's still that in many places. Just Me says, monologue or dialogue? You talking about me? Oh, this is absolutely a monologue. What do you think it was? This ain't no dialogue. We're not equals here. This is my life. All right, you are a visitor and a viewer, respectfully. But no, this is not a dialogue. It's a monologue. I'm taking your questions. I'm reading y'all questions and responding to them. So at this point, it's a modified dialogue. But I am still in control, just to be clear. Six said that's why it's called politicking. Exactly. That's exactly why it's called politicking. Politicking is all about building and leveraging relationships. This is extremely important in the business world. Any of you who's in business or professionals, I'm assuming that's most of you, politics is the key to your career moving forward. That does not mean that you should not be good. But if you have the right politics and you're good, you get magic. If you have the right politics and you're average, you can still be successful. I have some coaching clients who work in the financial space. And I had this guy, he said this to me once. He's a white guy, by the way, high performing white guy. He said, Dre, in the financial industry, any of you work in finance, y'all tell me if this is true or not. Just put the word true or false in the comments. When I get down there, I'll see it. He said, Dre, in finance, if you're just average, you can make $150,000 a year in finance. Now, this guy was making about $700K because he actually tries. But he said in finance, you only have to be good. You can be very average and you'll make a good, healthy salary. And he's 100% correct. If you pick the right vehicle, you can become quote unquote successful without even being good. Now, you pick the wrong vehicle, you might have to be really, really good just to survive. So you got to find the right combination. The right vehicle is one of the 12 work on your game commandments. And work on your game commandments is a real thing, as you can see it right here. We send this out as a bonus sometimes when people join our program, the 12 work on your game commandments. One of the commandments is the right vehicle, number 12, the right vehicle right there. You know, see it? So it's actually 13 commandments, but number 12 is the right vehicle. So you got to pick the right vehicle in life. The right vehicle means if you're 5'4" and Asian, you probably shouldn't try to make the NBA. That's the wrong vehicle for you. But if you're 6'8" and black and you can jump high and run fast, you might make it to the NBA. So vehicles are subjective, or the right vehicles, they're subjective. Donna said they know who the winner is before it ends. The world is all control, and we the people are waking up to it. Well, in some cases, Donna, I wouldn't be that nihilistic about it, but I get what you're saying. War said it's also a bloodline thing. Well, yes, it's a bloodline thing, in that if your dad's rich, then you're probably gonna be rich. And any of you who wasn't born into a wealthy family, your kids should get money from you because you should be setting them up. Hi, sir. Good morning. Person with all question marks. I'm going to go work on my game. Buy Americans. All right, Ruby. Good to see you. Thank you for the number 2 badge. So it said the Diddy parties. Cillian's mom said, I agree. The best athletes tend to rise to the top. Why so much hate for C. Clark or Eminem? Well, that's a whole different conversation. I did a live about Caitlin Clark, so you can find that on my YouTube channel, Cillian's mom. In sports, the best performers, it's not just the best athletes, the best performers. So you can be an athlete, but not a good player. But I get what you're saying. In sports, on the field, the best performers tend to win. Again, that's the only aspect of life where it happens that way. No other aspect of life does it work that way. There are singers out there better than Beyonce or Taylor Swift, but they are nobodies. Nobody knows who they are. Chewy said, I'll take a church over the government. I think a lot of people would. User 529 said, thank you for saying that. You're welcome. Willie said, government is no less efficient than the private sector. I strongly disagree with that one. I just strongly disagree with that. I don't know where you got that one from. Dynasty said, anytime they manufacture an outcome for people, it will always fail. Yes, and we know that. We got 60 years of examples of that failing. It's never worked. Lisa said, what do you mean? What is his point? His point is DEI does not, yes, I think you were responding to somebody else. Yes, DEI, well, it does change things, but not for the better. Ruby said, I hope Aunt Deb doesn't see this. I don't care if she sees it. She knows it happened. I'm not lying. So if she sees it, she can't say it didn't happen. That happened. So, not your average said, least obvious snake oil salesman. Who are you talking about? You talking about me? Hopefully you're not talking about me. I don't think, what am I selling? I'm not selling anything. K-Dog said, thank you for what you're doing. You're welcome. You know my name said, you are so wrong about DEI. What did I say that was wrong? Yeah, I had like 3 people say either that's not what DEI is or I'm wrong about, but you didn't say what I got wrong. What did I get wrong about DEI? Not your average said DEI includes treating minorities equal, not just hiring. What does that even mean? Treating them equal. What does that mean, treating minorities equal? Explain what that term means when you say it. DEI includes a lot of things, but tell me what you mean by that. And regardless of what you're saying it means, it's not really the bigger point that I'm making. The point is DEI has a corporate definition that sounds good and benign and an implementation that is completely different from its definition. And I explained this very compendiously at the beginning of this live. Again, those of you who've been here since the beginning know that I explained this already. So I think some of you are catching me out of context. I love Mamo said, you know how to explain it so well. Thank you. April J, thank you. Question said, we miss working with you. I don't know who you're talking about. First Time Friday said, DEI is an attempt to manufacture a desired outcome, so it's doomed to fail. This guy is 100% correct. Yes, I've explained that. First Time Friday has captured it properly. It's an attempt to manufacture an outcome. You cannot manufacture outcomes with masses of people. You can't do it. When you try, you will fail. It always fails. Ali says, what your cousin should have done was watch which buttons you were using and how to play the game. Yeah, that sounds good, Ali. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. It didn't work because I was just a better player. That's the point is I was just better than her. It doesn't matter. She could watch my hands all she wants. She wasn't going to win. And this is back in the Nintendo days. I remember Nintendo only had like 2 buttons. It was the A button, the B button, and you had the four-way pointers. That was all I was doing. So it wasn't so much about her watching my hands. She was still going to lose no matter what she did. She just wasn't good enough. Piano said, I disagree. You disagree with what? Brandon said, yes, erase victim mentality. Well, it's never going to be erased. But we can start erasing giving people excuses to be victims. They're still going to find a way, but we can stop handing them excuses. That I would agree with. Ruby said, I love and protect the animals and kids. That's about it. Okay. Carl Deering said, he's 100% right. By the way, thank you. Hippie Chick said again, bingo, thank you. ACJ Mom said, amen. Yes, amen. Carl Deering said, you have to know how to play the money game or get out of the arena. That's right. Well, you'll get kicked out of the arena if you don't know how to play the game. Linda said, it's probably in the public library as well for free. Yes, a book will be in a public library for free, but if a parent really wants a kid to buy a book, read a book, they go buy that shit. They ain't got to go look for it for free. And as a matter of fact, Amazon will bring it to your front door. You ain't got to leave the house. Most people don't even know where the library's at. So just order it on Amazon. I'm going to bring it to your front door. All right, within 24 hours. AD said, you said read the book to your kid, and then no, the kid reads the book. Well, it depends on what type of book we're talking, AD. If your kid's 15, yes, they read it themselves. If your kid is 4, maybe you can read it to them. So it depends on the book. But I get your point. ACJ said, my husband, as a teacher, says this is where parents are 100% missing. Yeah, my mom is a teacher, and one of the things that and it depends on where you teach. It depends on what school you're teaching at and the type of parents you're dealing with. But absolutely, that I hear a lot of teachers say that the parents of the kids that they teach do not really want to do anything. They want the teachers to do everything, and the parents ain't doing shit. This is one of the reasons why kids fail. The better the home situation, the better the kids do in school. You can send your kid to a shitty school, but if they got 2 parents at home who are on top of their shit, that kid will become successful, even if they're going to a trashy school. And if you have a parent at home who is not engaged and not paying attention, and you send your kid to the best school, that kid might still end up failing. The foundation of whether a kid succeeds in school is what's happening at home. It's not the teachers and it's not the school. It's what's happening at home. Lisa said, actually be a parent, you mean? Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I mean. Piano said, why wouldn't you want your kids to learn your history and everyone respect your history? When did I say that? It's a straw man question. I didn't say that. I said, if you want your kids to know their history, you go buy the books and make sure that they read them. Don't depend on the school to do it. If there's 10 books that I want my kid to read because I absolutely want them to know about these things, then I will buy the book and I will give it to my kid and I will have a conversation with my kid and say, I want you to read this book and you're going to read this book. And a week from today, we're going to have a conversation about it. So you better read the damn book. That's what you do. You don't send your kid to school and then get mad at the school because they won't have your kid read the book. The school is not responsible for educating your kids. You are responsible. The school is a supplement, but they're not responsible. Just like the gym is not responsible for you being in shape. You're responsible. You are using the gym to get in shape, but the gym is not responsible for your fitness. You are responsible for your fitness. Linda said, I love your attitude. Me too. I love Mamo. Good morning. CBC, person with the question mark said, I already worked with you, but I bet you didn't know that, sir. Well, who are you? This person with the question marks. You keep leaving these comments. I don't know who you are. CBCT, follow. Oh, you followed me. Thank you. Jan said, I love your content. All facts so far. Thank you for being so real. You're welcome. Thank you, Jan. Sassy Sissy says, thank you for speaking the truth. It is so refreshing. Keep up the good work. Thank you. Verima says, haven't read in about 2 weeks. Last thing I read was Archipelago Gulag. All right, well, read some more. Blue Horizon said, that's crazy because I read all the time. Well, this is a select group of people that I have here on this live. So all of you are not, I don't think you are a good reflection of the whole of America. The stuff that we're talking about here ain't for everybody. So most of you read, that makes sense to me. AD said, you are generalizing. Well, I have to generalize. I can't go to every possible exception, every single thing that I say. We don't have enough time to do that. So I have to generalize. But you understand my points. Is there any point you don't understand? All right, so let me take a couple more comments. Somebody said something about Starbucks. We'll get to that in a second. I'm trying to find where I was so I can get to everybody's comment, or at least the ones that I can see. There's a lot of comments today. Where was I? All right, I missed a good chunk of these comments, but I'll get to some more. Pretty in Pink said, what is your favorite book? That's a good question. My favorite book is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Robert is also my favorite author. Stephen Hall mentioned laziness. Yes. Hippie Chick said, thank you for this history lesson. It makes so much sense when people like being hateful, sadly. Yeah, I guess. And on some levels, yes. And people will prefer a good excuse to a good reason. Brandon says, it's refreshing to see someone come with facts and receipts. Also, you have a successful mentality. Well, thank you, Brandon. Rashim Tony said, if DEI rollbacks are about merit, why are none of Trump's appointees qualified? Well, Rashim, that's a straw man question. I don't think at any point in this live have I ever said that DEI rollbacks are about merit. Never did I say that. So you're asking me a false question that I didn't say. Then you said none of Trump's appointees are qualified. So I've already addressed this word qualified like 6 times in this live stream. I'm not a fan of even the word qualified because it's an extremely subjective term. That what you think makes somebody qualified, I could think doesn't make them qualified. Neither one of us is right or wrong. So I don't even like that word being used because it's a very flexible word that can be just changed. You could change the meaning of it from moment to moment. So I'm not even a fan of the term. Ask me a better question. Eve said he has assumed his position since 2015. You talking about Trump? Miss Party Raven said, you are amazing. Thank you for this. Well, thank you. Kevin P said, dismantling all the programs for the lower and middle class. What do you mean for? If you're in a position where the government programs are what are keeping you afloat, you have put yourself in a precarious position to begin with. So whether Trump dismantles them or keeps them, you're still in a precarious position. You don't want to be dependent on the government for anything. I'm talking to everybody. You don't want to be dependent on the government for anything. I don't care what it is. And I don't care what class you're a part of. And by the way, there will be no middle class. There will be poor people and rich people. So any of you considers yourself middle class, get out of it. I did a whole live on this about 5 months ago. Is on my YouTube channel. Stubbalicious says, as a small business owner that's struggling, your words and advice are a boost for morale. I agree, Stubbalicious. You should bring me in to speak to your company. Kevin P said, how is Trump helping you? Well, did you hear what I just said? Kevin, you don't want the government helping you. I don't need Donald Trump's help, nor do I want it. But if you ask me who is the better choice between him and Kamala, it's him. But that doesn't mean I want his help. I don't want help from anybody in the government for anything. So that's a false question. Hippie Chick said, I feel Obama created more division. Well, I think his presence led to more division. I don't know if he created it. I think his presence led to more division because a lot of people have very strong feelings on one side or another about him, but I'm not going to blame him directly for it. Same thing I would say about Trump. His presence has led to division, but I don't think it's because of him personally. I think as ever. Yes, it's impossible. That's why being president is I don't even know why anybody would sign up for that, because no matter what you do, you're going to piss off half the country. AD said you had to use your vote system to get him in and then do what he wanted. I don't know what you mean. AD. What's your comment mean here? Kevin P said creating Social Security, Medicare, unemployment insurance, Obamacare, Pell Grants. Yeah, I don't want. Well, he didn't create those things. Obama didn't create Social Security. I don't know what you're talking about there. Nor did he create Medicare or he created Obamacare. He did do that. He didn't create Pell Grants either. I don't know what you're talking about. And Kevin also said, crazy how so many people vote against their own self-interest. A lot of people have said that after the election, that when Trump won, you voted against your own self-interest. Well, people keep repeating it. So a lot of people have come to believe that this is how the people who voted against their perspective. So people who voted for Kamala and didn't like Trump say, oh, well, only people who voted for Trump are people who voted against their own self-interest. So it's what it is kind of a intellectual high ground fallacy. So it's basically saying, you people who voted in a way that I don't agree with, you're so dumb that you voted for your own demise. And I'm so smart that I voted against my demise. It just so happens there's more of you dumb people than it is us smart people. I talked about this earlier. I already explained this earlier, that if you folks who believe that Trump supporters voted against their own self-interest because they're too dumb to realize it, then why were you smart people unable to figure out in 10 years how to reach the dumb people and convince them to do what you were doing? You had 10 years to figure out how to talk to dumb people and get them to believe your intelligence, and you failed. You had 10 years to prepare for the test and you still failed, which means those of you who think that you're way smarter than Trump supporters, maybe you're not as smart as you think you are, because your results show that you were unable to convince people who are less intelligent than you to see things your way, which means maybe you're not that smart. I explained that already earlier, but I'll explain it again because I know I have some people who are thinking that way in my comments. CAF class says, speak on DOGE. I did a whole live on that a week and a half ago. So people asking me about DOGE and Elon. I did an entire live on Elon Musk and DOGE about a week and a half ago. It is on my YouTube channel. I'll talk about him again in the future, but I have already done that. 219 Muda say he was already president. Yes, exactly. So people asking, what's Trump's qualifications? He was the fucking president for 4 years. What other qualification could you ask for? That's the best qualification you could have for being president, is that you've been president already. So what are people talking about? What's his qualification? Lith Astrology said, unreal. I don't know what you're talking about there. Ad said, I'm not a fan of jocks, but I have tolerated listening to one. What's in it for you? Expand. Expand. Am I a jock? How am I a jock? I play professional sports, but I don't think I come off any way that makes me a jock. I don't think people here using that word anymore. What's in it for me? What are you referring to? In what? What's it? What's in this for me is that I get my message and my style across to an audience of people who otherwise wouldn't ever for anything. So it's not that I'm supporting any party. I'm supporting logic and objective thinking. And whenever I do that, people tend to think that I'm a conservative or a Republican or that I'm MAGA. And my response to that is, if being logical and objective makes me MAGA, what does that say about the Democrats and the liberals? Why does no one ever assume that I'm a liberal when I'm trying to be logical and objective? They always assume that I'm conservative. What does that say about the liberals? Unju says, love your take. Thank you. WFO said, that's a great take on Trump. Thank you. Chris MC said, life is all about choices. What you are not changing, you are choosing. That's correct. Lisa says, some people just can't absorb the words coming out of your mouth. People just can't think past emotion. Well, everybody can absorb what I'm saying, Lisa. They're just choosing to, what's happening is people run the cognitive dissonance. So most people tend to think more emotionally than logically. So when I come out and I'm saying things that are logical that people disagree with, they understand exactly what I'm saying. The problem is their emotions are fighting against the logic that I'm giving them, and to deal with it, and that's called cognitive dissonance, when reality is running into conflict with when your view of the world comes into conflict with the reality of the world, you experience what we call cognitive dissonance, and people have to come up with a way of dealing with that cognitive dissonance. The healthiest way is to question your own beliefs. But most people don't want to question their own beliefs, because that would mean that whatever you have believed up to this point was untrue, which means you either got fooled or you're not as smart as you thought you were. And most people don't want to reconcile that kind of thinking. So instead, they come up with a rationalization for the conflict, the discrepancy between their worldview and the real world. So they come up with these rationalizations that make their worldview, that validates their worldview. For example, when Donald Trump wins the election, they say, well, the only people who voted for Donald Trump are bad people. That means most people are bad, and I'm one of the few good people. That's a rationalization. All right, that's called cope. That's a reflection of Trump derangement syndrome. Or they'll say something like, well, a bunch of people who voted for Trump voted against their own self-interest. Again, that's a rationalization. All right, you people who voted for Trump, y'all are so dumb, you voted against your own self-interest, but I'm smart, I voted for my self-interest. Again, that's a cope. It's a rationalization. It's what happens when people experience cognitive dissonance. They become 8-year-olds, and they start coming up with stories that make them feel good about the fact that what they thought was going to happen didn't happen. And again, people who are more emotionally mature don't have this problem, but most people are not emotionally mature. So we accept them for who they are. Mark said, U.S. sleeper in intelligence, DEI means deployed, espionage, invisible. I don't even know what that means. Mistakey, Miss Talky Talk said, things went too far for the majority of the country. That's how he won. I agree. I agree with that. Agar 25 said, refreshingly logical. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for the heart. Renata, good to see you here. Sassy Sissy says, thank you for speaking the truth. It is so refreshing. Thank you. This person with the question marks, you got to stop spamming my comments. I'm going to have to block you. Amanda, thank you for the follow. Jan said, I disagree with the Starbucks comment. No better, LOL. All right, that's fine. I don't drink coffee, so I was just using them as an example. So maybe Starbucks is the best coffee. Is Starbucks the best coffee? I know McDonald's isn't the best burger. I do eat burgers. Who has the best coffee? I don't know. Brandon said, even job interviews are not qualifications. It is if the interview believes you have value. That's right. A job interview is not about your qualifications. Now, your qualifications can get you in the room, but if they don't like you, you ain't getting hired. You could be the best. You could be the most qualified person. You ain't getting a job. They don't like you. Jam. Oh yeah. By the way, if you're watching on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. The link is in my profile. Also follow me on Instagram, just in case I get kicked off of these apps. This app, TikTok specifically. Again, I say the same stuff on 7 different streams, but the only one that ever suspends me is TikTok. So that's why I'm telling you, TikTokers, make sure you follow me in more than one place. My YouTube, my Instagram links are in my profile, just in case, because this will happen. I will get kicked off again, guaranteed. I don't know what it's going to be for, but I'm going to get kicked off for something. Grateful Gamer says, spot on point. Thank you. First Time Friday says, that's why we need term limits on Congress. You know what? I agree with that. I agree with that, so that people will work in a way that they're actually serving the people and not themselves. That's one reason. But the problem is, for them to have term limits on Congress, they will have to pass a law, right? And who passes the laws? Congress. So think about that. Who in Congress is going to vote for a term limit that basically is going to shorten their amount of time in that position of power? How is that even going to happen? So I agree with what you said there. First Time Friday. I think a lot of Americans agree with that there should be term limits, because you got people in Congress that have been there for like 50 years. But who's going to vote for it? What congressperson is going to vote to basically fire themselves? Who's going to do that? It's 300 or 400 some people in Congress. How many of them are going to vote to shorten their own careers? So I just want to know how we're going to make that happen. I agree it should happen, but how are we going to make it happen? That's the problem. Hippie said, career politicians, we Americans were over them. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see, Hippie Chick, because wait till 2028. Trump only got 4 years. So 2028, I bet we're going to get 2 more career politicians running against each other. You ain't going to have a choice but to pick one. Or maybe not. Maybe somebody will come from outside. We'll see. Can for Fun said, that's a great way of explaining it. Thank you. Eve said, dude, that's not logical. What did I get wrong? If any of you disagree with something that I say, don't just say you disagree. Just tell me what you disagree with. Just come out with it from the beginning. Hippie said, exactly, it was a volunteer type position. Yes, exactly. That's what the government is supposed to be. It's supposed to be service. Government is a public service. And generally, public services are not always, well, sometimes they are, but they're not always paid positions. The government was not designed to be a career. It was designed to be something that you served on the side and you had your regular life. And one of the reasons why it mattered that people in the government had a regular life is so that we knew that they understood what regular everyday people were dealing with because they were regular everyday people. What's happened is now the people running the government are not regular everyday people. They're career politicians that only talk to other politicians, and they're not even talking to the people that they allegedly are serving. This is the disconnect that we have in the government. And this applies to both the Democrats and the Republicans. This is why I do not trust the government. I don't want the government reaching into anything that I'm involved in. I don't care who the president is. I don't want the government involved because these people are completely out of touch with what's happening with everyday people because they're not that. That's what they used to be, but that's not what they are anymore. And this is why Trump was the better choice, because he is the closest thing to an everyday person we've had this century run for president. When we get down to the final two people, he's the closest thing we've had to an everyday person. Every single one of the rest of them, we go down the whole list. Al Gore, name anything any of these people have done professionally outside of being in politics. I'm going to name their names. Al Gore, George W. Bush, John Kerry. Who was after that? Barack Obama, John McCain,